Well, it is 2 minutes to 2:30, the time slated for the National Assembly proceedings afternoon sitting. And you are right on time to join this live broadcast that is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation on this 14th day of June, the year 2023, for the National Assembly proceedings afternoon sitting. In the order of business for the members of the National Assembly is that they will be resuming debate on the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2023. It is a bill that entered its second reading stage this morning in the morning proceedings, and various members got the opportunity to participate in this bill. It is a debate that began this morning, and various members already got their time to discuss and debate or air their opinions on this particular bill. Just to remind you is that the finance bill was submitted by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning and formulates the proposals announced in the budget for the 2023-2024 financial year relating to liability to and collection of taxes and for matters incidental thereto. And the bill amends finance-related legislation, including the Income Tax Act, the Value-Added Tax Act, the Excise Duty Act, the Tax Procedures Act 2015, and the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act 2016. So the debate on this bill will be resuming this afternoon, as members did not manage to conclude debate on this bill for the morning sitting. And this afternoon, various members who have not been able to participate will get time to debate on this bill. In the morning sitting, Speaker directed that each member will be getting 5 minutes to debate on this bill. And that is what has been happening. We believe that once resumption in the debate on this bill kicks off this afternoon, is that each member will still have the 5-minute time or duration to be able to give out their opinions on this bill. Issues taking precedence, including the housing levy as well as the 16% VAT on petroleum products. But as you can see, the Speaker of the National Assembly is in the chambers, Honorable Dr. Moses Wetangula. He will be presiding over this afternoon session. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Good afternoon. My name.
Amen. We have quorum, members. Let's proceed. Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable members, there are 2 petitions. The first one from a citizen, Francis Ngunga, for whom I will present. The second one to be presented by the Honorable Ali Wario MP Garsen. Is he in the chamber? Honorable Ali Wario. Members, take your seats. I want to... Honorable members, there's a petition regarding punitive charges levied by the Kenya National Highways Authority Honorable members, Article 119 of the Constitution accords any person the right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority. Further, Standing Order 2252B requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member. In this regard, I wish to report to the House that my office has received a petition from Honorable Francis Ngunga, who is the member of County Assembly for Mua Ward in Machakos County, calling for consolidation of licenses issued by the Kenya National Highways Authority, as well as comprehensive review of KENHA's licensing and levies regime. Honorable members, take your seats. Take the nearest seat. The nearest seat. Even Robert Mbui doesn't know the meaning of nearest. Right. Honorable members, the petitioner is aggrieved by KENHA's issuance of exemption permits and licenses for the transport of abnormal loads that include road construction equipment such as excavators, bulldozers, rollers, and graders, as well as other overdimensional or heavy cargo. He avers that KENHA unfairly institutes double charges that are punitive and regressive with regard to the said licenses. The petition describes how KENHA charges low loaders for carrying loads that do not exceed 10 tons, but further proceeds to levy additional charges if the load in question is a grade or a roller, notwithstanding the fact that the said grade or roller does not exceed the 10-ton limit that has already been paid for. Honorable members, in light of these woes occasioned by double charges and related inconveniences, the petitioner seeks the urgent intervention of the National Assembly in reviewing KENHA's licensing framework for abnormal loads transport, consolidating KENHA's exemption licenses, and having them issued annually as opposed to quarterly, and the release of abnormal load transport vehicles from police stations pending the review of KENHA's licensing and levies regime. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, and further that the matters raised in the petition are not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal body, I hereby commit the petition to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration pursuant to Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its findings to the House and to the petitioner in accordance with Standing Order 2272. I thank you. Is Honorable Wario in the House now? Honorable Wario, you prosecute your petition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raise to present a petition number 31 of 2023. I, the undersigned, on behalf of the residents of Garseni constituency, draw the attention of the House. 1, that the Tana Delta irrigation project was initiated by Tana and Athi Rivers Development Authority, TARDA, to enhance quality of life through sustainable utilization, environmental protection, food security, and revenue generation in the lower Tana River Basin. That the project is estimated to cover 8 locations in Garseni constituency, namely Muina location, Salama, Galili location, Kipao location, Wachuodha location, Konemansa location, Handaraku location, and Idawarede location. That the project as currently designed will lead to great displacement of residents of the said location, destabilize their livelihood economically, socially, and politically, and further interfere with the environmental ecosystem composed of protected forest areas that are an ecological habitat for marine and terrestrial wildlife. That part of the area covered by the project is in Tana River Delta, which is Kenya's 6th Ramsar site and the only Ramsar wetland outside the rift, as declared by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. That the effort by the resident to engage TARDA to review the boundaries before implementation of the project have not been successful. That the resident and that the reluctance by TARDA to conduct public participation on the project violate the national values and principles of governance stipulated in the Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The issue in the respect of which this petition is raised are not pending before any court of law or any constitutional or legal body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Public Petitions Committee, 1, engages the Tana and Athi Rivers Development TARDA to review the boundaries of land managed by the Tana Delta Irrigation Project in order to, among other interventions, ensure that Tana River Delta Irrigation Project does not extend beyond the southern parts of Garseni-Lamu Road and should instead be extended eastward toward the border of Boni Forest to create a security buffer zone. Number 2, facilitate clear demarcation of boundaries of TARDA land from the general community land. Number 3, compels TARDA to comprehensively engage residents of Tana River in all aspects of the project's design and implementation, and makes any other recommendation or actions deems fit in addressing the plight of the petitioners. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Wario, the two petitions are committed to the Committee of Public Petitions. Because of the debate before us, I will forego the need for any comments. We'll leave it to the committee to deal with those two petitions. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 14th June afternoon sitting. 1, first quarterly report of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission for the year covering the period 1st January 2023 to 31st March 2023 from the Office of the Attorney General. 2, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2022 and the certificates therein. Mukurweini Technical Training Institute, Samburu Technical and Vocational College, Madenga Technical Training Institute, Mount Elgon Lodge Limited, Simlo Seeds Company Limited, Kieni Technical and Vocational College, Madera Technical and Vocational College, Lake Victoria North Water Works Development Agency, the Technical University of Kenya, Multimedia University of Kenya, National Youth Service, National Youth Council, the Institute of Human Resource Management, Pwani University, Kenya Water Towers Agency, National Irrigation Authority, Sikri Technical and Vocational College for the Blind and Deaf, Chuka Technical and Vocational College, Tarbot Technical and Vocational College, and MSOS Technical and Vocational College. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Chairperson, Select Committee on Delegated Legislation.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 14th June 2023. This is the report of the Select Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2023. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member of the Kenya Parliament Delegation, I don't know to where, Honorable John Kiari. John Kiari? That must be IPU delegation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And I rise, Mr. Speaker, to lay the following paper on the table of 23. And the paper I'm laying, Mr. Speaker, is a report of the 146th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, also known as the Parliament of Parliaments, the IPU, and related meetings that were held in Manama in the Kingdom of Bahrain from the 11th to the 15th of March 2023. Mr. Speaker, I do appreciate this opportunity, and with your magnanimity, Mr. Speaker, because this is the first time I was speaking on something substantive, I would beg you allow me 1 minute to just say thank you to all the members of Parliament who came in a very big way to support me when we were laying my dad to rest, and say a very special thank you to yourself, Mr. Speaker, all of Parliament, the Clerk of the National Assembly, the sergeants, and everyone who accompanied us as we were laying the great man to rest at home. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Kiari. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Kiari.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that this House notes the report of the 146th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, the IPU, and related meetings that were held in Manama in the Kingdom of Bahrain from the 11th to the 15th of March 2023, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 14th June 2023. This is signed by myself. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2023, second reading.
My records show at the time we rose, Mishi Mbogo, member for Likoni, was on the floor with 4.5 minutes to go. Honorable Mishi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I said from the onset, I strongly oppose this bill, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I'm just citing on the increased taxation on fuel levy. And for me, if you increase fuel levy, it means the cost of production is going to be high, the cost of transportation is going to be high. It will also affect agriculture, because agriculture depends on machinery, and the machinery, they depend on diesel and petrol as power. Honorable Speaker, as you know, the cost of living right now is very high, and Kenyans have been burdened by this. Honorable Speaker, right now, unga is about 250. If by bad luck this bill passed, it will mean it will go beyond 250 shilling. That means Kenyans will not be able to have a plate of meal. I don't know whether Kenyans are going to go back to the concept of fasting, the way the Shakahola victims have been doing, because they will not be able to put a plate to eat. Honorable Speaker, there is the issue of the turnover tax. The turnover tax before, it used to be around 1 million shilling, but now it has been reduced to 500,000. Meaning if you divide by 365 days, it means if you're making a sale of about 1,370 per day, you are going to put a tax of 3%. And these are the hustler people, the Mama Mboga, the Boda Boda, the Mama Mahamri. All of these people, they don't have money, they are broke, they are poor, and yet they're being told to give that kind of a taxation. Honorable Speaker, the issue of housing, I think this could be done voluntary because right now, so many Kenyans, especially the civil servants, let's look on our humble teachers, our police officers, our KDF guys, and other civil servants who have already incurred some mortgages from other financial institutions. Others have taken loans from various banks, and yet they are being forced to pay a fund for housing. Honorable Speaker, I think it should not be mandatory, but it should be a voluntary. So many questions have been raised on this issue of housing. For instance, if a couple, both of them are civil servants, are they both going to be charged that 3%? Is 2 houses a priority for them? Maybe they would need to have only 1 house. But then, because they are both civil servants, they are going to pay that taxation. Another question is, for somebody who has few years to retirement, maybe 5 or 10 years, if he pays that taxation for 5 and 10 years, what will happen? Is he going to get that house? If he's not going to get that house, where will that money go? Is he going to get that money back? Is he going to get an interest of that money? So there are so many questions which as Kenyans, we need to have been thought about it even before putting on in this bill. Honorable Chair, there is a saying in Kiswahili which says, mtu ujikuna afikapo. I know we have put a big budget, but do we chew what we cannot swallow? Let us just go gradually because Rome was not built in a day. I know there is a lot of wastages. There is a lot of corruption. If you only look on those loopholes, on the wastages and on the corruption, and also those vote heads, which they are not that priority. I don't say that they are not important, but maybe it's not a priority. Like today in the budget, there are some offices which have been allocated, huge fund, a lot of money, big monies, and yet if you look on the function and the roles, it is not a priority. Our priority as a country is to reduce the cost of living for Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, I want also to talk about the increased tax on mobile money transfer. As you know right now, majority of Kenyans, I can say maybe over 70%, they depend on mobile money transfer. Even our parents in the rural setup where the banks are not there, we keep on sending money via mobile money transfer. And today, we are going to increase the taxation from 12 to 15%. That means you will pay more 3% to send money through mobile money M-Pesa. Honorable Speaker, there is also advanced tax on commercial vehicle. When you talk about commercial vehicle, you don't miss to talk about matatus, you don't miss to talk about lorries. We are using matatu. Is the fare not going to be high? It is going to be high. You want to maybe to transfer your materials, building material and something else using the lorries. Lorry is also part of the vehicles which you are talking about here. So it means it will be very expensive. Honorable Speaker, I want to urge my colleague to be objective leader, which I believe they are objective leader, and look at this bill and look at Kenyans. Because we don't say that we don't want to pay tax. Taxation is part.
Mutunga. Yes, was a point of order. Kamket. Is it Kamket? What's your point of order? What's out of order?
Mr. Speaker, I raise understanding order number 1. Mr. Speaker, given the interest in this bill, and having noted, Mr. Speaker, that the card system in this House is totally rigged, could I be in order, Mr. Speaker, that you use a mixture of both the card and other considerations in identifying members to speak.
What are other considerations?
There are other members, Mr. Speaker. There are members, Mr. Speaker, who never even went for lunch. They were here literally, they put their cards from 1 up to now. And there are other members, perhaps, Mr. Speaker, who may have been doing other things for their constituency. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, I'm seeking your indulgence.
I understand you.
Yeah, that you use a card and a mixture of a bit of members catching your eye. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What I don't know is what your other methods are. But members, the screen is full, both requests and interventions. Requests are 89, But on the screen, I can only see about 15, of course, because of the structure of the screen. Interventions are 9, and I know many more who want to speak. Listening to the tone of the debate, it's up to you as a House to decide whether you want to stick to 5 minutes or you want to cut a little less. You are okay with 5 minutes? Okay. We'll go on with that, if that is the mood. What we will do is, you know, in a debate such as this, there are a lot of considerations that we follow. We'll be as fair to everybody as we can. Remember that we are sitting up to 9 p.m. So by that time, I'm sure the majority of you will have had an opportunity to speak. Even if we are saying 5 minutes, if you came to prosecute only one point, when you finish it, you don't have to meander around on other issues that are not clear. Prosecute your point and then give room to somebody else. Mutunga and Sergeant, the chamber is too hot.
Yeah, it's hot.
Can you improve the aircon?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this bill. Honourable Speaker, as we speak to this particular bill, I seek for sobriety because the issues and matters in this bill are really important to this country. Honourable Speaker, yesterday we passed a report, clause by clause, the report on supplies, and we all did not have a problem. We all were happy at the end of the day. The bill pronounces some measures to raise revenue, to increase revenue by 211 billion, so that we may attain a target, which is in this year's budget, of 2.5711 trillion. For what purpose are we raising this money? Honourable Speaker, we want to raise money to increase, or rather to boost manufacturing and job creation in this country. If we create more jobs, it means we employ more Kenyans. It means we get Kenyans out of destitution. Honourable Speaker, it is also supposed to increase access to food or food security, in other words. It's supposed to increase possibility to have universal health and also complete the stored projects. I am sure in every backyard there's a stored project, and these are the projects we would like to complete with this money. And finally, and unique in this particular respect, Honourable Speaker, affordable housing. I want to highlight a few issues that have been brought by my colleagues. One of them, some have cited insensitivity to Kenyans. Is creating jobs being insensitive to Kenyans? Is employing the 6 million or so youths who are in this country looking for jobs for 4 or 5 years being insensitive to Kenyans? Is spreading the little that we have to all the others being insensitive to Kenyans? Madam Speaker, I do not think so. Many have also cited that there are other means, and they're not coming clean on which means. Which means are we referring to? More debt, more burdening, selling out this country to foreigners, or auctioning our institutions and our investments? I do not think that is the way to go. Honourable Speaker, let me pick on the issue that is more contentious in this House, the issue of 1.5% housing levy. I'm looking at Kenyans who are unemployed, and I'm looking at employed people saying that giving 1.5% is punitive to get our daughters and sons employed, to get your brothers and sisters employed. You cannot surrender 1.5. Honourable Speaker, I would like, if it were possible, to bring an amendment to say a minimum of 1.5%, and those who can give more, to give more, because we need Kenyans employed. Once we employ these Kenyans, are we not spreading the power across the domain? Are we now supporting those who are at the bottom of the pyramid? If somebody is in a household that is educated and doesn't have a job, and there are so many others who are depending on somebody who doesn't even have a job today, are we saying that it is unreasonable to employ such a person? Housing scheme has the capacity to employ 3 people per every 3 million house, and indirectly, that is directly and indirectly 8 people. If we create this employment, don't you see the sense in having the youth employed? Honourable Speaker, I think that is the lowest we can go. Minimum 1.5%, and those who can give more, to go ahead and give more. Honourable Speaker, there was an issue of aircraft and parts. The duty on aircraft and parts, Honourable Speaker, this comes in to address the demand for air travel. I am sure some of us here suffer because they do not have air travel. I come from Meru. We have an airport at Isiolo, which we can use very effectively, but there is no commuter plane. We would like to have a commuter plane like the one going to Kisumu, like the one going to Mombasa, like the one going to Garissa. We would like that. Investment in this field is impossible because of the cost. Is that really being unreasonable? Don't we have important things to do over time? Is our time not useful as it is, as yours is? Let's look at these things positively and try to see how we can build this economy in a better way. Honourable Speaker, there is the issue of investment in reducing cost when it comes to importation of materials. When you look at the bill, there are about 21 ways in which it is lifting the Kenyans out of the burden. And the issue of the fuel levy from 8 to 16%. Look at the other East African countries whom we compare with. I'm sure some people are saying in their minds that we should not compare ourselves with anybody. But are we living in a universe which is only us alone, or are we living in a universal economy? In a universal economy, we respond as per the others. If the others have 16%, why not us? Tell me, why not us? Honourable Speaker, I support fully this bill.
Lillian Kogo. Lillian Kogo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. Yes, Minority Whip, Honorable Dr. Lillian Kogo. Thank you. Thank you so much. PhD, LLM. Thank you. Not LCC. Honorable Speaker, allow me, Papa, to rise and vehemently oppose this particular Finance Bill 2023. And I want to do it on the basis of a couple of matters. And after that, I'll just sit down, Honorable Speaker. It is proposed, Honorable Speaker, that there is a tax that is going to be placed on what is being assumed or being called beauty products. And beauty products, most of the consumers of beauty products are women, Honorable Speaker. And I do not know why somebody would hate Kenyan women that much. Why do you hate Kenyan women that you don't want them to be beautiful? Why do you want to hate Kenyan women so much so that even when you send fare, you complain? Why do you want to hate Kenyan women to the extent that you assume these are beauty products? But things like wigs are used by women probably to cover up when they are having or they are suffering from cancer. What I'm saying, Honorable Speaker, these are not only beauty products, Honorable Speaker. We have both men and women who suffer fungal infection of nails, Honorable Speaker. And that is why people end up using what they call fake nail products. These are not necessarily used for beauty. These are even recommended by doctors. But what I really hate is the attitude that people have towards Kenyan women, Honorable Speaker. We want to compete with others in beauty. We want to also look nice. We want our husbands to see us beautiful, Honorable Speaker. And we have a right, Honorable Speaker, to use this addition product, Honorable Speaker. So whoever thought about putting any or introducing taxation on beauty products, please think twice. Because I know even your wife at home uses them. Secondly, they do. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that most content creation, digital content creation, is done by young people, Honorable Speaker. And as I speak for young people of this country, Honorable Speaker, it doesn't matter whether this particular taxation has been reduced from 15 to 5%. These are people, young people, who take a lot of their time to try and put food on their table and to get employment for themselves. Why do you want to cheat the Kenyan public that you are creating employment when you are killing employment on the other side, Honorable Speaker? These are people who are young and they need tax reprieve so that they can be innovative and they can also be creative, Honorable Speaker. Of course, I don't want to belabor, Honorable Speaker, on increment of taxation on petroleum products, Honorable Speaker. Everything, all manner of fuel requirements is petroleum-based. Why should somebody insist, whereas we already have high taxation? We are spending so much already, Honorable Speaker, on electricity. The cost of electricity in this country is so high, and most electricity generation is done using petroleum products. How much are we going to end up paying for electricity, Honorable Speaker? And Honorable Speaker, as I speak, please, Kimani Ichung'wah, can you allow me to expedite what I'm doing? I am not going to listen to you. I didn't speak when you're speaking, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. This is what I'm saying as I speak, Honorable Speaker, that I am going to say no when the time comes. I am saying I'm rejecting this finance bill in totality, Honorable Speaker, and I'm saying on behalf of Rangwe people who have sent me, Honorable Speaker, that I oppose this particular bill. I thank you.
Yes.
Honorable Speaker, on a light note, you need to protect me. And I appreciate that there are some members who generate bonga points from their constituencies by mentioning the name Kimani Ichung'wah. But you know, it can't be that I can't even smile. I know Lilian Gogo is a beautiful lady from Rangwe. And when she speaks about generation of electricity and says most of the electricity is generated through fuel, and I smile at her because she knows she's lying. And I was only smiling because she's telling a green lie. She knows most of our electricity today is green energy. It is not thermal energy.
Okay.
And because she knows it is the truth, she's misleading
your
people.
point.
Please protect me, Mr. Speaker.
Order. 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 Member for Manyata. Yes, Chonga, what is the problem? Hold on, Kitonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you have been observing since when this session started, two members, the majority, leader of majority and his deputy, are busy intimidating this side instead of following what is going on. They are bullying the opposition side. Mr. Speaker, my request, Mr. Speaker,
yes,
is to make a statement about these two leaders here.
Order, Honorable Chonga. Order, Honorable Chonga. Order, Honorable Chonga. Honorable Chonga, you are legitimately elected by your people, and you should not allow yourself to be intimidated by simply a member looking across at you. That cannot be, and the House will protect every member against, and there's no limitation as to where members should sit. Kitonga Kon.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I thank you for this opportunity to contribute to this very important bill. Honorable Speaker, before I even go on, I want to start by correcting the honorable member who has just contributed. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it's important when members are contributing to this, they should have at least gone through the bill. Honorable Speaker, if members turn to page 169, they will see that the clause that was taxing human hair and products, beauty products, has been deleted by the committee, Honorable Speaker. So I can assure the member that she will be beautiful and she will continue being beautiful. But we also insist on natural beauty, Honorable Speaker. But Honorable Speaker, there has been a talk so much about the hustler in this bill. And Honorable Speaker, it's important we demystify and know who are really looking up for the hustlers. Honorable Speaker, anybody who says that when we are talking of building houses, getting money that can be able to go down to our tribes our construction of markets and everything, Honorable Speaker, is bad, that is a member that does not care about the hustlers. And Honorable Speaker, there are members who are opposing this bill, but what they want is to have youths that are desperate, that can be used for maandamano and to cause havoc in this country because they have no work or duties to do, Honorable Speaker. I would like to say that this bill, Honorable Speaker, the finance bill, is a bill that is all-rounded. And Honorable Speaker, because I have been thinking clearly on alternatives, and having looked at the people who have thought out this bill, I've seen they have looked at it wholesomely. I would like to say that it is upon the executive, because it is true that we are tightening our belt. And I want to say this clearly, Honorable Speaker, that we will do our part and pass this bill in this House, Honorable Speaker. But at the same time, I would like to call upon His Excellency the President and his cabinet and anybody else, including this Parliament, to start looking at how we are spending the money for taxpayers. I would like to see a case where we have austerity measures so that while Kenyans are tightening their belt, while Kenyans are trying as much as possible, we get these monies, Honorable Speaker, but let us have as showing, not only doing but also showing that we understand the status of this country and we put austerity measures and close those loopholes where, Honorable Speaker, money get lost. I would like to say that, Honorable Speaker, I was happy yesterday when I saw the money that has been given to institutions that fight corruption. And Honorable Speaker, the only thing, and having spoken to many Kenyans, having spoken to my constituents, the challenge and their fear is how the government has been losing money through corruption. The assurance by His Excellency the President that monies collected will be used for the right reasons, without corruption. And I would like him to stamp his foot so hard that we don't have any coin getting lost through corruption, Honorable Speaker, because that will be very bad for anybody who has participated in passing this bill. Honorable Speaker, maybe, and moving forward, in another 1 year, the bill that is going to be read in this House will be for increase of salaries of teachers after we pay pending bills that have been accumulated for 5 years and 6 years, Honorable Speaker, during handshake government. Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Doris Donya. I want to see if you live to your promise that you'll speak for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to oppose this motion, more especially from the side of betting. I don't understand why they had to lower the tax, bearing the fact that most people have committed suicide because they've lost their money. Wives, we can't sleep at night when our husbands are betting because they are waiting to win. So you can imagine the separation from love, having lowered the betting tax. On the other side, Mr. Speaker, every speaker who is supporting the motion is saying that we have a lot of public debt. What you are not telling us is what informed this public debt. What can Kenyans celebrate when we talk of these debts? What is the value? I come from Kisii. There are no roads, no teachers at the junior secondary school, no doctors in hospitals, no even medicine. We can talk of the other days when we were given free nets. Nowadays, the government gives nothing, no free nets. Even university students are complaining the supply of condoms has gone down. We are here, we are not even taking care of our citizens. No food, Mr. Speaker, we are not eating. We are hungry. We are talking of houses. You want people to vote for us. Who will be voting? Let me ask you, Mr. Speaker, which man will come and tell a woman, I love you, at night when you are hungry? What will you be doing? Your food is empty. We are opposing this motion, because this bill, because it does not cater for our interests. Mr. Speaker, the loopholes. Today I saw in one of the TV stations, one police officer makes 15,000 shillings in 2 hours from bribes. How much is that in a day? We should look on ways on how to seal the loopholes, not on ways to take from Kenyans what's duly theirs. I stand firm from Kisii County. The people of Kisii County whom I represent have told me the bill is not good. When I had a conversation with Honorable Soro, he was not smiling because he knows deep down his heart this bill is not good. And if this bill is good, honorable members, why can't we do secret balloting? You will see how it will fall flat. My people from Kenya Kwanza, the other side, you will vote no. So, Mr. Speaker, if this bill is good, let's do secret balloting,
yes,
and
Osoro.
It will fall down.
Yes, Osoro. What is your point of order?
Honorable Speaker, I don't think it's in order for Honorable Donya to use me in her statements that when I had a conversation with her that I wasn't smiling. Honorable Speaker, she cannot use there is no smilometer to define whether I support this thing or the finance bill or not. She's been smiling all along when I was contributing, Honorable Speaker. An indication that she was supporting what I was saying is only that at the point she stood to speak, she lost control and only imagined about condoms and things that we actually do not do in Kisii, Honorable Speaker. I consider Honorable Donya as...
What is your point of order?
My point of order, Honorable Speaker, is that she's using my name to make a statement, which is wrong. I support the finance bill. We are not going to vote secretly. It is public, and Kisii County is supporting the finance bill, the entire Kisii County.
Donya, finish up.
Thank you again, and Honorable Soro.
You have 30 seconds.
Lastly, Mr. Speaker, if the government wants to make money, which every point is, we are looking for money, we are looking for money. Even in this finance bill, you are just saying you want money, you want money. Please ask your government, which you are supporting, to make use of our idle land. They make more factories, so, like Mumias is dying, Stony Sugar is dying. That is where we find employment, not building houses. In fact, you are advocating for divorce because if a teacher, you are assuming Donya is a teacher. My husband is a teacher. I contribute house taxes. How many houses will you give Donya and her family? Meaning my husband will be sleeping in another house. I'm also in the other house. What are you telling Kenyans?
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Donya. Owen Bayer.
Honorable Speaker, as we come away from the entertainment by Honorable Donya, we would now would like to get to serious business. Honorable Speaker, you know, when I used to teach something called systems theory. When you are looking at systems theory, you needed to look at the input and the output.
Honorable Donya, what is order and buyer?
Point of order. How can he say entertainment? You are making my electorate think I'm a comedian, Honorable Bayer. What are you saying? You have to withdraw, not entertainment.
Carry on, Honorable Bayer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You need to start paying content fee for your new job. Honorable Speaker, I'm talking about systems theory. And When you're talking about the systems theory, you look at the input and the output. But at the end of the day, Honorable Speaker, the bigger picture, the whole system is very important. As we split hairs discussing the finance bill and the issues that go into it, we need to look at the big picture. The big picture is this country requires revenue. The revenue that is required is needed so that we move this country forward. What are we looking at? We are looking at 300 billion shillings. Where is this 300 billion shillings going in this finance bill? Honorable Speaker, if I come from the coast, and I come from the coast, I wouldn't oppose the finance bill because the Blue Economy and Fisheries Department, for the first time, to grow the fisheries industry in the coast is getting 1.8 billion to ensure our fishermen have nets, our industry in the fisher industry has resources. Again, the shipping and maritime affairs industry has 24.88 billion, money that is meant to grow the maritime industry at the coast. Again, in this budget, for which this finance bill is going to finance, has 2.2 billion for buying land from absentee landlords. Honorable Speaker, if you come from the coast and you oppose this finance bill, the finance bill which is going to finance all these beautiful, good things that the president wants to do for the coast region, who are you fighting for? That is the question that I ask. Who are you fighting for? We need to look at the big picture. When we collect all these resources, all this money, whether it comes from hair, from nails, from condoms, like Donya said, from wherever it comes from, the bigger picture still remains an important thing, and it is about what we get from it. And I'm very sure after this finance bill, the coast region will rise because of the money that we have. Honorable Speaker, again, the question is, where do we as a country want to go? Do we want to go over the cliff through more borrowing, or do we want to stop borrowing, start looking at inward revenue and use that revenue to ensure that we can develop this country, or we want to go over the cliff with debt? Honorable Speaker, many of these people who I shared a podium with when I was in ODM believed what Kibaki did when he was president. That Kibaki brought in the new saying, kulipa ushuru ni kujenga taifa, ni kujitegemea. Kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea. A lot of them believe in that mantra. They believe in the Kibaki economics, which was about self-sustaining a country through taxes. Today, they will sit here and say, we cannot pay taxes. We should not pay taxes. But what I want to look at, Kenya Kwanza has a manifesto which it has to fund, and that funding must come through taxes, and it is these taxes that we have to collect as a government and ensure that Honorable Wandai, Honorable Mbui, they have enough money for their roads in their constituencies, that they have enough money for CDF, and this money will not come from donors. It will come from the taxes that we pay. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, Honorable Speaker, the coast region where I come from is known for cement manufacturing. This cement industry has been for a long time stifled because of imported cement. A lot of the Chinese have built these roads through imported cement, and yet this country has a capacity to produce cement, employ many people, and use the local people and local resources to create wealth for this country. Today I'm happy because this finance bill imposes a heavy tax on imported cement, giving an opportunity to the cement industry and the cement industry in this country to develop. Honorable Speaker, we have the ultimate duty as leaders to ensure that we sacrifice just like our ancestors and our forefathers sacrificed for this country. We cannot be talking about me and I and the other. We need to look at the nation, at the country. Kenya must rise, and it cannot rise.
Thank you, Ruth Odinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I'd like to oppose the financial bill. Mine would be to start by saying that there's no Kenyan who does not want to pay tax. And we are not here to say we are opposing this financial bill because we don't want to pay tax. I think every Kenyan is paying tax and has been paying tax. Probably they are only complaining that the tax that they've been paying, they do not know what it does that benefits them as such. And that now that they're not even satisfied with the one they've been paying, they're now being made to pay more than what they've already been paying. And I think that should be stated clearly because it's important that we are not misled by the KK brothers of ours here to say that we are saying people should not pay tax. That is not the case. I would like to start off with the fuel levy. For me, I thought that one of the reasons that the fuel levy was actually reduced from the 16% to the 8% was during the COVID times when the country was going through a very terrible time and there was a revamp in there was a slump in our economy. And after that, we are now in a period that we are stating that the economy is now back to normal. I don't think so. I don't know why the Kenya Kwanza team have decided to agree. The government is saying that now we are back to paying 16% from 8%. Yet the economy is worse. People are suffering more. Most businesses are still closed since COVID. What has happened that has informed us to now state that the fuel levy should go from 8 to 16%? I think that was too much of a drastic change. We all know that the fuel levy is going to affect the whole of the economy, especially Kenya being an agricultural economy. With the fuel taxes going higher, it means, therefore, we are going to be paying more for machinery in the farms. We are going to be paying more for transportation of our goods, and this is really going to affect our economy. On top of that, we are saying that the VAT should be put on export goods. If we do that, we are killing the same export that we are expecting Kenya to be a net exporter of our goods. How do we then start putting VAT on those exports? Number two, I would like to talk about the reason why why the women of Kenya started Mama Mboga. The Mama Mboga movement of us, where we are now having women doing table banking, started because women were not feeling confident enough to go to the banks to get money from the banks. Reason was that the banks were charging high interest and taxes to the women. They therefore started this table banking. Now, the table banking has been helping the Mama Mboga. If you now start saying you're going to be charging taxes on the table banking, this is actually immoral and criminal to say that you want to tax Mama Mboga. That is going to really be one of the things that I think is going to make this country to flop. Third and most, I come from Kisumu County, and Kisumu in Western Kenya and the whole of Western Kenya have got, through in historical injustice, have never been able to have the industries that some of these other parts of the country enjoy. Most of our economy is actually run by the Jua Kali sector. And when you now say that you're going to put the turnover tax to be able to see that we are now paying taxes from 500,000 instead of the 1 million, you are actually. Anyway, I know my time is about up, Bwana Speaker. I want to say something last. Bwana Soro, you actually said that in Kenya, those who have, the majority have their way as the minority have their say. The majority in Kenya are the Kenyans who are out there. The Kenyans in Kisii and everywhere else, they are the majority. And if this financial bill does pass, mtaona Kenya is going to go on fire. There will be fire in Kenya. And the fire will be coming from the majority, who are the people who are outside in Kenya, who are putting these taxes on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable members. Members, let's acknowledge in the presence of the galleries, public and speakers, Moi Girls, Nairobi, Kibra, Tekimbere Primary School, Mbere, Embu, Elgon College, Nyaribari Church, Kisii, Kimasian Boys Secondary School, Kipkelion East, Kericho. Gedesmane Academy, Suba North, Homa Bay. Beth Mugo High School, Dagoret South, Nairobi. Kinderville School, Mavoko, Machakos. And Kavingoni Secondary School, Makueni. On your behalf and on my own behalf, I welcome those students and their teachers to Parliament. Didaraso.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, on the onset, I rise to support this bill, and for the following reasons. Honorable Speaker, this side of the House has a government to run. Government is about running schools, building roads, hospitals, and all those services that is for the well-being of the Kenyan citizen. Honorable Speaker, when the other side says we don't want to pay taxes, I want to say as follows. Every week, I drive for 8 hours to Marsabit on a first-class tarmac road that was paid for by the Kenyan taxpayer. Our population is small. Had we been told, pay for that road, we as the people of Marsabit or Isiolo, we could not have afforded to pay for that. For that reason, there are many things that we must have in mind. Taxation is about generation. That one generation must bequeath something to the following generation. And we have the choice. Either we bequeath them burden and poverty, or prosperity and equity. And in this particular case, I believe Kenya Kwanza government has said, let us bequeath equity and prosperity to the people of Kenya and for the following generation. Honorable Speaker, taxation comes with many things. One of it is burden. Everybody must dig into their pockets. But you have to make a choice. Do you want tomorrow to be much harder than today, or to make it harder today so that tomorrow you will have a better life? Among those things which we as legislators must go through, just visit Kenyatta National Hospital, where the very poor or deprived of our people visit that hospital, where they hardly get medicine, they hardly get good services of doctors, and our people are hardly able to pay their bills. But the doctors there and the staff that is in Kenyatta National Hospital, I think they are doing a magnificent job. But the question is, if we cannot pay for that facility, then what will happen to the majority of Kenyans who, like you and me, do not have that insurance cover to enjoy the best of facilities in this country? Honorable Speaker, the elephant in the room, why there is a lot of haranguing and complaints from the other side, is because the Kenya Kwanza government is saying, let us grow the tax bracket. Let us grow the economy. Because we have been selectively taxing the few who earn salaries and the few big companies. Today we are saying, let everybody who is within reach of taxation pay their tax. And I think that is the discomfort that we are experiencing. Honorable Speaker, this particular committee have done a good job. What they have done is they have tried to balance between tax exemption areas and taxation areas. Finally, it is on the housing levy. Honorable Osoro said, in Kisii there is not enough land. In Marsabit, we have enough land. Sometimes we think what to do with that land. For that reason, if there's a constituency where the government is ready to build the 290 houses, I think they can come to Marsabit, and that land is available. Finally, the issue of housing levy, it is a saving, not a taxation. Kenya is considered to be one of the countries where people...
Your time is up. Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to start by swearing that I will say nothing but the truth only. Honorable Speaker, since this country became independent in 1963, projects have been funded, development projects have been funded, and the funding has either been through local revenue or debt.
You are there.
So this idea of people saying that development will not be able to be carried out because the bill will fail is a fallacy, Honorable Speaker. The second point, Honorable Speaker, is that we all say that Honorable Mwai Kibaki was able to multiply local collection by 5 times. There are 2 things which Mwai Kibaki did for him to be able to collect that kind of amount, Honorable Speaker. The first one was to ensure that Kenyans get value for money, so that the taxes they pay, they are able to get the kind of development they expected. And the second one was to build public trust, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if you look at what is happening, Honorable Speaker, if you look at what is happening, Honorable Speaker.
Order, Honorable Makali Mulu, there's a point of order from...
Honorable Speaker, I did not intend to stop my brother from contributing, but I think there is a problem that has just occurred with our machines, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
Since I came in, I have been number 5, and now it has gone completely off. And my immediate neighbor on my left is also experiencing a similar challenge, Honorable Speaker. So how, all of us, so how do we then track? Because some of us forfeited their lunch in order to be here so that we contribute substantively to this debate, Honorable Speaker. So kindly advise, Honorable Speaker, on the same.
Go on, Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, what I was saying is,
improvise.
I just want to comment on a number of proposals. Honorable Speaker, the proposal to increase VAT from 8 to 16%,
yes,
fuel levy, Honorable Speaker, will have 2 implications. The first one is going to be able to increase the cost of transportation, and the second one is the cost of production, Honorable Speaker. This is going to be made worse, Honorable Speaker, by the fact that in the same bill, there is a proposal, Honorable Speaker, to increase what they are calling, Honorable Speaker, vehicle advance, increase advance payment on passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles, Honorable Speaker. So the cost of transport is going to be increased. And as a result of that, Honorable Speaker, even agricultural production is going to be more costly, Honorable Speaker. So we are likely not to get the kind of benefits we expect from that increase. The second matter, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the housing levy. Honorable Speaker, it's been proposed that we charge 3%. I listened to the committee chair indicating that he will be reducing that to 1.5%. But 2 things, Honorable Speaker, have happened, which are going to make the things worse, Honorable Speaker. The first one, the capping has been removed, Honorable Speaker, of 5,000. So you only pay now 1.5% of your basic pay, Honorable Speaker. The second one, Honorable Speaker, is that the issue of the money being collected, the issue of it being a saving, where you can claim it back, Honorable Speaker, has also disappeared. So now what is going to happen, Honorable Speaker, is you give out the money, you will not be claiming anything, which makes things worse, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I've not even spoken for a minute, I can see. But yeah, so Honorable Speaker, the issue is the housing levy, Honorable Speaker, will be making matters worse for
for the Kenyans instead of improving it. The third issue, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of moving a lot of the goods from zero rating to tax exemption, Honorable Speaker. The fact that you are moving from zero rating to tax exemption, Honorable Speaker, is going to increase the cost of the same goods because the component of VAT for the inputs will not be factored in, Honorable Speaker. So, by the fact that this bill is proposing to move a lot of the goods from zero rating to tax exemption, Honorable Speaker, is going to make things worse for Kenyans. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, is excise tax. There has been...
We'll even decide that. Okay. Yes. But we'll... Yes. Thank you, Makali Mulu. Give Makali Mulu 1 minute.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. So the last point, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the excise tax, where I was saying the fact that when you impose excise duty, Honorable Speaker, on goods like clear gas, cement, and sugar, what will happen, Honorable Speaker, is even the expectation of generating more revenue or improving local manufacturing
was proposed to be 15 from 12, but the committee has retained it at 12 and ignored Treasury. So, Mr. Speaker, that should be even noted. Mr. Speaker, the digital content, a few speakers previously have said that the digital content was at 15%. Yes, Treasury had proposed 15, but the committee has reduced it to 5%. So, Mr. Speaker, there are many other things which are good in this bill, where the rental income was at 10%, but it has been reduced to 7.5%. So, Mr. Speaker, let us look at the good points in this bill, and I believe once the bill comes into play, we will have the housing levy. I need houses. If the members who say they do not need houses, I need houses in my constituency, and Meru County is ready to take all those houses which will be provided. Because once those are there, I mean, we are not looking at houses for ourselves. We are looking for houses for our people who will be getting those houses. Mr. Speaker, the clause number 52, where the committee has rejected the proposal of Treasury to give the Commissioner of Tax to registration on notification of abuse of power. So, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of good things in it. The LPG, 16% VAT on LPG has already been removed. So that will mean LPG now will be costing much, much cheaper, and green energy as well. There are many incentives for the green energy. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support. And there are people on many WhatsApp groups, they say that they will probably not elect us in 2027. We want to tell them, wait and see how these tax proposals will work, and I believe they will work to our good. And the Azimio should give us their proposals of the budget, not to pinpoint the bad parts. They should have told us what would they have done differently, rather than Speaker, and I support.
Karoli Omondi.
Both on the report as well as the final bill, rate for Treasury bills, so as to protect the investments against inflation. I would also like to, finally, I would also like to suggest that we remove the tax on the income received from investments made by the public on housing levy. Mr. Speaker, on the charge on tax on non-residents, I would like to recommend very heavily, because I was not in the committee, that we avoid situations of double taxation or double jeopardy for non-resident Kenyans. And we should respect international obligations that we have under double taxation treaties. An issue that I was going to object to very strongly, but which has been addressed, was the 20% deposit on tax assessment when you appeal against KRA decisions. Mr. Speaker, as a lawyer, you would know those provisions that were proposed were tantamount to overturning the well-known principle of onus of proof on its head. But that has now been overtaken by events, and I'm very happy that that particular issue has been addressed. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of VAT on fuel, I understand very clearly that this is a conditionality from the IMF. But it also demonstrates how we do our politics in Kenya. it is very interesting that those who last year voted for the introduction of the VAT 8% are this year completely opposed to it. And those who opposed it last year are this year completely supporting it. But let me add my voice and say our economy is still very fragile. We can hardly see the early green shoots of a recovery. I would have wished to see very strongly that the 8% is not introduced on fuel levy because of the adverse impact it will have on everybody. On 35% tax, I agree with that. Those who earn more should pay more. Finally, Mr. Speaker, let me put it on record that I think the House should be respected by the various political parties, and members should not be intimidated or arm-twisted on how they should conduct their business in this House. And they should be free to vote the way they wish with their conscience for the public interest. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable members. Order. Order, honorable members. Take your seats. Sorry, take your seats. Honorable members, I appreciate the tremendous interest in this debate. On our screen, which has been malfunctioning at times, we have 115 requests. At 5 minutes, it means by 9 when we rise, just about 57 of you will have, no, 67 of you will have spoken. I want to suggest to you, members, and I remember my good English teacher, Roger Hargreaves, said, if you can't make your point in the first minute, you are unlikely to make it in 20 minutes. If you agree, we can reduce a little further to 3 minutes per member, save for the time reserved for the majority leader. If we reduce to 3 minutes per member, then we'll push to ensure that as many of you air your views and go on record on this issue. If you are in agreement, I want to proceed that way. Are we in agreement? Yes. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. David Ocheng. Adjust your timing, 3 minutes. And honorable members, please reduce your trips to the chair so that we can order. Honorable members, please reduce your trips to the chair. We'll make sure everybody speaks.
I'm the first to suffer the consequences of 3 minutes. Mr. Speaker, I stand here to support the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, and to state that, Mr. Speaker, the very role of government is to ensure that the country is run in a manner that responds to the needs of the people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the needs of our people are diverse, are many, and can never be met within a year, 2 years, or even in a lifetime, Mr. Speaker. But it's always important for any government to ensure that it's able to satisfy at least the bare minimum of the needs of the citizens, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after the budget that we passed last week, it is upon us as a country to ensure that we have resources, to ensure that we are able to implement our agenda. Mr. Speaker, this bill has gone through, in my opinion, the most thorough public participation that any bill has ever gone through. It's like we are changing the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, but we are not. We're just debating a bill that is going to help, Mr. Speaker, create jobs. Mr. Speaker, this bill has made proposals to put taxes that will ensure that you don't import so much fish, you don't import furniture, we don't import cement, we don't import paints. Mr. Speaker, the bill as currently done promotes job creation. And that's what we need in this country. We need more jobs, not fewer jobs, Mr. Speaker. And by ensuring that we are protecting the local industry, Mr. Speaker, we hope that more jobs will be created. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy with the committee on its recommendations on the tax on sugar. I was so worried, Mr. Speaker, that this was going to make our industries uncompetitive in EAC. Mr. Speaker, I thank the committee for accepting to remove the proposed import on sugar, because we're going to have our products going out into the East African region at a lower rate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the housing levy, Mr. Speaker, is the elephant in the room. Mr. Speaker, it is stupid. In fact, I don't know what I can describe, to beat a man for doing what you yourself proposed. The other side proposed this housing levy, Mr. Speaker. Now it's being implemented, and so the issue with the other side is not that they don't like housing. The issue they have is that someone else is implementing it. If they were the ones implementing it today, they would be asking us to support, Mr. Speaker. So I want to just request all of us to give this housing levy a chance, Mr. Speaker, and warn, Mr. Speaker, that after we approve this housing levy, Mr. Speaker, this parliament should ensure that anybody who misappropriates money for housing should go to jail, Mr. Speaker, forthwith. Mr. Speaker, will ensure that we are accountable, that the government is accountable on the money Kenyans are going to give on the housing levy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to end by saying that patriotism, Mr. Speaker, means supporting your country all the time, and the president when he deserves it. This president just took office 8 months ago. He deserves our own attention and support for him to make this country a better place, Mr. Speaker. I support and hope that all of us are able to, so that we can move this country forward. Thank you.
Rachel Nyamai.
Thank you, Honorable
you have
Speaker.
3 minutes each.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, on the onset, I support this bill. Mr. Speaker, I am supporting this bill because my constituency is a beneficiary of a project of 147 kilometers of tarmac, and I have made requests for more roads. So I will be insincere, Honorable Speaker, to be in this House to say that the budget should not be financed. Honorable Speaker, on the matter of housing, Mr. Speaker, this is not a new project. It is a project that has existed in the previous regime, and it is here with us now, and I would like to encourage all our colleagues to support this bill. I support this housing levy because it is going to keep our young people busy through through provision of labor, through provision of construction materials, among others. Honorable Speaker, I would like also to say that we cannot continue producing what we can. We cannot continue importing what we can produce in this country, Honorable Speaker. We are importing toothpicks, Honorable Speaker. We cannot continue doing so. We need to give a chance to our country so that we can have steel wool produced from our iron ore. We produce labor here. We produce all these other products here so that they can be manufactured here, packaged here to benefit our youths, to keep our youths busy so that they get off alcohol and all the other forms of ills that keep them away because they are busy. Honorable Speaker, I would like to go to the matter of digital marketing and say that every government must take digital marketing very seriously and must harness it, and the finance bill has already taken care of that. Honorable Speaker, matters to do with Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, pay-per-click, social media marketing, email marketing must be exposed to tax. Honorable Speaker, I would like to go to the matter of production of the content that is being done by our young people, that because our cities are clean, because our lawns are beautiful, our young people are able to produce very good videos that are on sale. Honorable Speaker, I do not see any problem that we give a small fee of 3% has been suggested. So, Honorable Speaker, as I sit, I would like to say that I'm supporting for electricity, for every development. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
It's within the constituencies, and as we do that, Mr. Speaker, anytime our president or the leadership would come visiting our constituencies, we'll tell them that we need. Let me say that.
Order, Anjala, you know me, we have been in the same party for a long time, before you veered off. And I'm telling you as a fact that the money was disbursed, 5 billion, and the minister has indicated that before the closure of this financial year, all the outstanding CDF money will have been disbursed. I know, Pasaris, you want to ask about the Women Fund. The two are congenital twins. The two are congenital twins. They go together. Who had finished speaking? The member for Larry. Now I'll give to the member for Larry. Now I'll give to member for Nyando, Jared Okello. I'll come to you, Jack. Just be patient.
Honorable Speaker, I
With 3
thank
minutes,
you.
everybody will speak. Just be patient.
Oh, my 1 minute is already going. Honorable Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity, and I rise to vehemently oppose the finance bill, because it is that which will paint a very gloomy picture on the faces of the electorate that sent us into this House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this morning I was driving to Parliament, but I also thought of detouring into immigration to check on a passport that I've been pursuing for a little longer. And Honorable Speaker, I was told a similar story, that the machine broke down over 1 year ago, and it has not been rectified to date. And Honorable Speaker, that is the same government that wants to provide me with a house. And similarly, Honorable Speaker, I tend to look at the squalor situation that our police officers live in. 60 years after independence, Honorable Speaker, and that is the same government that is promising me a house in the next 7 years, Honorable Speaker. Either there is an absolute appetite for money in this government, or there is greater affinity for corruption that will be unraveled within the next few years, Honorable Speaker. I am perturbed that the VAT on fuel that will move to from 8% to 16% will have a multiply effect on everything from production to manufacturing to transport. Every sector will have to hike their prices just because of this movement from 8% to 16% of VAT, Honorable Speaker. And this is something that we have to interrogate very well. Honorable Speaker, I come from a sugar-growing region, and I'm disturbed that the local sugar is now going to attract taxation. And yet we know that under the COMESA trade tariffs, there is zero rated taxes on COMESA sugar, Honorable Speaker. Are we killing our sugar to the detriment? Are we, perpetuating the interest of COMESA sugar to the detriment of our own, Honorable Speaker? I am told, and I have read, that there will be VAT on insurance, Honorable Speaker. Are we taxing the accident, or we are taxing the injury, Honorable Speaker? These are some things that we need to really look into, Honorable Speaker. Then there is finally the tax amnesty that has been taken back to December 2022, Honorable Speaker. The law does not act retroactively. The law moves. There is something fishy with this tax amnesty, or there are a few individuals who would want to escape the hangman's noose when it comes to tax violations, Honorable Speaker. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity.
Bashir. Honorable Bashir.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this Finance Bill 2023 has generated a lot of interest, more so to most of Kenyans. And the reason for that is because of the lies and the rumors surrounding the finance bill. Some Kenyans were actually asking me, why is the government introducing a finance bill looking like there has never been a finance bill in Parliament? That this is the first finance bill ever to grace this House. And that is the concept that those who oppose have driven into the minds of Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the entire finance bill cumulatively, how much does it plug into the 2023-2024 budget? Only 311 billion Kenyan shillings. But what it has created, it's as if that this finance bill is being used to generate 1 trillion shillings. And I'm sure those opposing have not even taken into cognizance that it is only plugging 311 billion shillings into the budget of 2.6 trillion shillings. These are things that people don't want to know about it. And so The point is that don't make it like this is Finance Bill 2023 is the entire budget and everything. No, that is the only amount it is bringing. But again, do we have a choice? The choices are two. We raise taxes or we borrow. The easier route is to borrow. The hard road is to raise taxes. When you borrow, it's an easy route, but ultimately you will pay through the nose. But if you raise your own taxes, however painful it is, because as I said, no pain, no gain. You must raise
to have a house, and for Donya, who said she'll have a house, her and her husband, they can use the other house to rent as they live in one of the houses. So you don't have to live in both houses. You can live in one and rent the other, and you get additional income. Let's talk about employment that we get from this housing. There's a lot more employment that will come from this housing. At the end of the day...
Member for Bumula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. From the onset, I wish to oppose this bill. Of members, clubs, trade associations, and women chamas. Literally, Mr. Speaker, this bill is proposing now to bring the chamas of women in the villages now to be taxed. If you can remember, honorable members, this government came into power riding on the hustler nation mantra. Women in chamas, are they hustlers or are they people with means? Two, Mr. Speaker, this bill introduces a turnover tax which now targets the small businesses. Now, if you are a mama mboga, you are in the village, you have your daily sales at 1,370. Know that Ruto's government is coming for you, and now they are coming to tax you. Now, if you go to a level of taxing mama mbogas, what government are you? What hustlers are you protecting, Honorable Speaker? And it's on that note that I oppose this bill, because most of our border-borders who helped this government a lot, border-borders who went around saying we are hustlers, Now, I want to tangazia those border-borders that your days are numbered. Ruto's government is coming for you. If you are a border and you get anything in excess of 1,370, know that you are going to be taxed. Honorable Speaker, this government has employed or proposed to employ a lot of KRA people to ensure that now they will start going around harassing these mamas in the villages to ensure that mamas pay tax, to ensure that border-borders pay tax. We are saying no to this bill because it's going to frustrate our people. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Chungwa is harassing me, but you cannot go anywhere, Honorable Chungwa, with this. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the bill proposes to tax this housing tax. It proposes to tax civil servants who in the end, Honorable Speaker, there is no framework that defines how they are going to be allocated these houses, how they are going to get their money back. And on that note, I say no.
Majority Leader, you can now have you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I support this bill. Honorable Speaker, as I support this bill, Honorable Speaker, let me just begin by pointing out the three critical issues that I see this bill proposing to do. One is to raise revenue to meet the expenditure of our national government and our county governments. The revenue expenditure that we approved yesterday and even supplied to ministries. Two is to provide tax incentives to both consumers and Kenyan businesses, and that's why you see a raft of proposals that incentivize the Kenyan businesses. Three, Honorable Speaker, is to improve the tax administration by easing the tax burden to persons and also to businesses paying taxes. Honorable Speaker, it is not lost on all of us that we are in an economic crisis in this country. Honorable Speaker, the economic headwinds that we are facing as a country, including the high cost of goods, the high cost of living, a weakening shilling against almost all major foreign currencies, are linked to the residual effects of the post-COVID or the COVID pandemic, and also tied to the disruptions occasioned by the war in Ukraine and Russia, and also the instability within our region, Honorable Speaker, with the influx of refugees coming into our economy and other areas. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we are in a situation where we are not alone globally. We are part of the global economy, and the rising interest rates in Western democracies like the US have had a ripple effect on our exchange rate and consequently even on the cost of living and the cost of commodities, considering that we have been importing most of our goods, including, Honorable Speaker, food items. Honorable Speaker, it is true that in the last few months, government has had to waive duty on food items to try and bring down the cost of living and make the cost of living more palatable to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, this finance bill of 2023, and I must thank the chair of the Committee of Finance and all the members of the entire 15 members who sit in this committee, because for the first time, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans, even Kenyans who never knew what applied more than any other bill in the history of our legislative processes in this House. But, Honorable Speaker, the vilification has been informed by misinformation, a lot of propaganda, a lot of insinuations and disinformation of things that are not even in the bill. But the sad thing, Honorable Speaker, is that even as we sit here today, there are members who have not even interacted with either the bill or even the committee's report. And Honorable Speaker, you have had members stand here and say, oh, our beautiful ladies, their wigs and all the other decorative items they use are being taxed. But if you interact with this report, the Finance Committee's report, on page 169, I see the committee report has dropped that particular provision. Honorable Speaker, I have had a member here, the member for Nyando, say that we are now taxing accidents, that insurance compensation will now be taxed. And I did hear even a veteran member like the member for Kathiani, the Honorable Robert Bui. And I confronted him that day when I saw him on radio speaking. And I asked him, Mheshimiwa, where in this bill did you read that people will be taxed for insurance compensation? And Honorable Speaker, if I draw reference, because it's good, to page 240 of the bill, this bill talks about taxation of input VAT on taxable supplies that you are being compensated after loss on input tax that you had already claimed against your output tax. Honorable Speaker, for someone who does not appreciate finances and taxation, it may be too much English. And maybe a number of us have been misleading Kenyans out there in funerals, in rallies, out of not knowing. But I want to confirm to the people of Kenya that a lot of the misinformation and propaganda that has been used to vilify this bill is untrue. There is no person who will have an accident and you'll be forced or you'll be required to pay VAT on your insurance compensation out of an accident. It is only on taxable supplies where you had claimed input tax, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as we vilified this bill, Honorable Speaker, we forgot all the good elements about this bill, and I appreciate what many members, especially my colleagues in the minority, have been saying. I reject this bill in totality. As you reject this bill in totality, be kind enough to inform Kenyans that income tax on rental income is falling from 10 to 7.5%, but nobody says that. We only talk about what is going up, only VAT on fuel. And even VAT on fuel, Your Honorable Speaker, is not a new thing.
We were here in 2018 on this floor. The same mouths today that are vilifying the rise of 8% to 16% advocated for the 8% that exists today from 0%. The same voices, Honorable Speaker, that vilify the housing levy today. And I saw someone on social media, somebody asking, did President William Ruto borrow this from the former Prime Minister? Because in the Azimio manifesto, I'm told the housing levy was part and parcel of that manifesto at 1.5%. Therefore, at least on this one thing, our two manifestos between the two competing political coalitions, we were agreed that there was a need for housing in this country. But today you will hear members asking, who asked you for a house? As much as nobody has asked me for a house, every day I walk around my constituency, young men and women asking me for jobs. How the housing agenda is much more beyond houses. It is about the creation of jobs. It is about the creation of wealth. It is about spurring economic development and economic growth in this economy that will be unmatched from the heavy investment that will come out of this housing levy. And I think since we are all agreed on the need for this housing levy, and I did hear two members in the morning, lawyers of high esteem, one of them is a senior counsel, Honorable Speaker, say, you know, the housing is a devolved function under Schedule 4 of the Constitution. But also forgot to mention that under Article 43 of the Constitution, housing is a fundamental human right that government is required to provide to the people of Kenya. And I couldn't bear not ask myself as I watched the Honorable Tienda Amolo in the morning trying to prosecute that case, and ask myself, if we were to argue that way, that we cannot tax Kenyans to provide housing to Kenyans, why are we taxing Kenyans to provide health care? That
has a duty to be factual in terms of our standing orders. I think it is not factual for the majority leader to stand here and tell Kenyans about the issue of the devolved functions on housing, while at the same time I'm raising on the question of the required to be factual, standing order number 91. You will not intimidate me. You know that I am not capable of being intimidated, so shut up. You cannot intimidate me.
Order.
So,
Order. Order. Honorable, have you prosecuted your point of order?
I have not finished, and my point of order is very well founded. It is required that anybody who presents their need are required to be factual. And even though the government taxes on everything, the duty to implement it is a fact. It is not on government. And on this taxation bill, it has not been put anywhere that this will be implemented by the county. Is the majority leader in order? And please remember, KK, you cannot intimidate me. You cannot.
Ichungwa, carry on.
Honorable Speaker, I choose to ignore that for obvious reasons. Honorable Speaker, I was on incentives. And Honorable Speaker, this bill proposes a raft of incentives that have lower tax implications to the people of Kenya. And I was talking about manufacturing, from the manufacturing of human vaccines in Kenya. Honorable Speaker, this bill speaks to incentives that will lower the rate of income tax and offer incentives for manufacturing of human vaccines in Kenya. And we all remember pre and post-COVID, the issues we had with COVID vaccines, Honorable Speaker, and what implication that will have to all our young men and women who are looking for jobs. Honorable Speaker, also in respect to local manufacturing, in the manufacture of motor vehicles, the bill has proposed a concessionary corporate income tax rate for local vehicle manufacturers at 15%, down from 30%. But nobody will mention this, Honorable Speaker. Nobody will tell you, among us those who are vilifying this bill, Honorable Speaker, that critical value chains in the manufacture of vehicles, including solar batteries, electric cars, their incentives have been input in this bill, and the committee actually has added further proposals even on the import of the electric cars and motor vehicles, Honorable Speaker. including electric motorcycles, to bring down the amount of fuel that we consume every month, Honorable Speaker, that is taking a huge chunk of our foreign exchange. Honorable Speaker, I have spoken about the rental income tax that is falling from 10 to 7.5%, bringing down the cost, the burden of tax for landlords and consequently to tenants who can now enjoy lower taxes, lower rents when the taxes being paid by landlords are being lowered, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on VAT, those who tell you about, or rather vilify the bill, lying to Kenyans that they will pay VAT on tax, on insurance compensation, will not tell you that this bill is now exempting VAT for inputs on goods where farms used to manufacture drugs, both human and animal drugs, Honorable Speaker. The bill also provides exemptions on construction and equipping of specialized hospitals, Honorable Speaker, which was with a bed capacity, and I see the Honorable Nyikali is very keen on that, a bed capacity of 100 beds. But the committee, in their own wisdom, have now reduced that exemption to bed capacity, hospitals with a bed capacity of only 50 beds. You can imagine how many hospitals in our constituencies can now afford to have a 50-bed facility that will enjoy tax incentives, therefore bringing the cost of medication and health care, making it cheaper for our people. But nobody, again, Honorable Speaker, will tell you about this. Again, on VAT, Honorable Speaker, there are proposed exemptions to several agricultural products, among them the transportation of sugarcane. And I was wishing the honorable members from the sugar belt were all here, because I have not heard any of them speak about this. Honorable Speaker, they will now enjoy exemption on transportation to sugarcane, of sugarcane to sugar mills. There will be exemption on fertilizer, exemption of value addition to tea. Honorable Speaker, the manufacture of pesticides and pest control are also being exempted under the VAT. And all these things, Honorable Speaker, are in this bill. But nobody wants to say, I will say them, Mr. Speaker, because I said in this bill, and the committee, if you interact with the report, Honorable Junet, has improved on those proposals. And the bill seeks, for instance, to remove the annual inflation adjustment for certain accessible goods that have been making business people and manufacturers to review the cost of.
Give him 2 minutes.
Honorable Speaker, the review of cost of prices were occasioned by the review of inflation on excise duty. This now will become a thing of the past. Honorable Speaker, from the lake region, the coastal belt, where we are producing fish, you are not telling your communities and your voters that we are now protecting the fish industry with a 20% levy, which unfortunately the committee has reviewed to 10%. And this is to protect fish farmers in this country, and not just in Nyanza or the coast. Even fish farmers in Ondire, in Kikuyu, are now protected from cheap imports. And we have seen Chinese trawlers, Chinese coming, let me not mention countries, Honorable Speaker, apologies for that, but we have seen foreigners importing fish into our country, destroying our local farmers. We are protecting those people, but nobody is speaking about them. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to speak about them. Honorable Speaker, other than the fish, imported furniture, Honorable Speaker, if you walk through all government offices, including our constituency offices, Honorable Speaker, we use imported furniture. There is now a levy of 30% on imported furniture to make sure that hustlers producing furniture on Gong Road, Karioko, Kariobangi, in Kikuyu, Makutano, they are able to produce furniture and be able to sell them even to government institutions, Honorable Speaker. But we are not speaking about this. It is easier to vilify this bill. It is easier to sell lies and propaganda, like those I have seen in Kiambu County, lying to people that even the doors that carry milk are being taxed. But they are not telling them that there are incentives for local chocolate manufacturers who use milk that will come from farmers in Githunguri, in Kiambu, or in Limuru. It is easier to sell lies, Honorable Speaker, but allow me to support this bill with nothing but the truth that is contained in this bill. And as a close, Honorable Speaker, I want to speak to the people of Kenya. You have been told many things. vilifying this bill that are untrue. I want to assure you, should this House approve this bill, together with the amendments being proposed by the committee, you will see, you will not be as hurt as those who vilify this bill, as those who lie to you have made you believe. You will come to see it is only for your good, because we are here to represent you, to do and act in the best interest of the people without being directed by any other interests other than the interest of rising our economy from where it was left by the handshake regime and those who were there before us. And finally, Honorable Speaker, knowing and appreciating what has been said, we have two choices: to either raise taxes from the people of Kenya and finance the expenditures that we all approved here last night, or to go out and borrow. But we said and we committed as a Kenya Kwanza government, we shall not sink this country into a deeper economic hole by borrowing. We shall be innovative. There are innovations to tap into new taxes, like the digital economy, Honorable Speaker. And I appreciate the committee has brought the digital content providers from 15% to 5%. But there are also digital assets like the cryptocurrencies, Honorable Speaker, that are not being taxed. We are tapping into those things to be able to raise more taxes and expand the tax base. Finally, Honorable Speaker, let us not lie to Kenyans. If there are people who will pay more out of this, it is the rich. It is the rich who are earning 800,000, 500,000 shillings and above who will pay more in terms of pay as you earn. Honorable Speaker, the other things that have been said about the hair products, I did mention all those are things in the past. The hustlers in the kinyozi salons are protected by the Finance Committee. Therefore, let us not vilify that what is good for political expediency. Let us, borrowing the words of my brother David Ochieng, let us be patriotic enough. If the housing levy in the Azimio coalition manifesto was a good thing, it is a good thing in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, Kenya Kwanza implementing it. If it was a good thing not to overborrow in the Azimio manifesto, it is a good thing for the Kenya Kwanza government not to overborrow and raise taxes, raise revenues to make our country more sustainable and more economically independent, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, for the good of our country,
brought the amendment to the finance bill to reduce it to 0%. And that is one thing that was agreed unanimously by the whole House. And I remember even the Speaker then, J.B. Muturi, was supposed to subject that matter to Article 114 of the Constitution, but he waived it on the floor of the House, and he said the amendment should come directly to the floor of the House. And in the end, an agreement was made in the House here that we go to 8% and not 16%. Mr. Speaker, that 16% is the poison chalice that is in this finance bill, Mr. Speaker. Once we implement the 16% on fuel levy, everything else will go up in this country, Mr. Speaker. Let us not hide ourselves. Let us not close our eyes on reality. Let us be truthful to Kenyans. Let us not accept that. I'm told the proposal might be from IMF, from where. Let us not care. This House must stand together and stand with the people of Kenya, because we must make life bearable for them. That is our work. That's why they elected for us. Secondly, can I tell the majority leader that the housing levy that he has alluded to in the Azimio manifesto is completely different from what is on this finance bill, Mr. Speaker. Our housing levy was modeled in accordance with the Singapore model, where we were supposed to collect money cheaply, affordably, in a manner that is bearable to the people of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Not this one of collecting through the nose, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I participated in when they were formulating the Azimio manifesto. But Mr. Speaker, it is completely different. It is like day and night. Don't use the Azimio manifesto as an example. If we were allowed to donate that Azimio manifesto to you, every Kenyan today will be happy and will be supporting this bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, that let us be careful as members of Parliament, because Kenyans are looking up to this House. This bill was prepared by the executive, but it is the House that has the final say on it, Mr. Speaker. That is why they say there is no taxation without representation. That is why we are here to safeguard the interests of the public. So don't be cheated that when this House passes the bill, the executive will wash their hands on us. They will say it is Parliament that passed the bill. It's not them. I can assure you that. You wait until it is passed. Let us scrutinize this bill properly. Let us make sure that it is passed in a manner that is for the well-being of the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we are discussing here big projects, housing, we are discussing many big things, roads, flyovers, and everything. People of Kenya today, Mr. Speaker, are discussing food. They are discussing what to eat, how to clothe, and how to take their children to school, Mr. Speaker. Let us not speak to them like the famous French queen, what was her name? Mr. Speaker, can you help me? Antoinette Mariette. The woman, the lady who said when her people were hungry and they were asking for bread, she told the people, you can serve them with cake. Mr. Speaker, let us not go that direction. Let us serve Kenyans with food so that they can go to school. They can go to bed when they are not hungry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to say, this bill is going now to the third reading. We have a chance to rectify this bill as a House. Let us not be pushed to a corner. Whether you are in Kenya Kwanza, whether you are in Azimio, let us not be pushed to a corner by the authors of the bill.
And management of hazardous waste within Africa.
File runs. Let us come together. Let us
against corruption, UNCAC and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption, GOPAC Annual General Meeting, and 4, the second reading of the Statutes Law Miscellaneous Amendments Bill of 2022. Finally, the House Business Committee, Honorable Speaker, will convene on Tuesday, 20th June 2023 to schedule business for the rest of the week. And I wish to lay the statement before the table of the House. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next. Yes, Junet, what is...
Mr. Speaker, in line with the statement that has been tabled by the Majority Leader, I think now there is clarity in the House that the finance bill is coming up for the third reading on Tuesday next week. Because, Mr. Speaker, yesterday when we were debating the finance bill for the second reading, there was a lot of confusion that people didn't know, and many members are saying did not know that the question will be put, even though we have Standing Order 95 that allows anyone to stand up and ask for the mover to reply. But now with clarity and with a statement that now has been tabled by the Majority Leader, there is clarity that the third reading is going to happen next week on Tuesday, and members must be aware of that, especially members on our side. Now, you can prepare properly. Thank you very much.
Yes, Chungwa.
Honorable Speaker, my good friend, the Honorable Junet, might not have heard me clearly. I said from business beginning on Tuesday, in the course of the week, next week, we will have the third reading and the appropriations bill, should it be published over the weekend. But that is not to say it could be Tuesday, and the Honorable Junet is a member of the House Business Committee, and he knows it is a House Business Committee that schedules business for the week, and I believe when we meet on Tuesday 20th, we'll be able to schedule business for next week. Two, Honorable Speaker, there should be no excuse for any member of parliament to be anywhere else other than in the National Assembly, in chamber, debating, and therefore there were no surprises yesterday. Every member of parliament who's been elected by the people of Kenya from the constituents we are elected in, we should be in the House from Tuesday to Thursday. And it's a very short 4 hours in the afternoon, another 8 or so hours on Wednesday, Thursday, another short 4 hours, and we're off to our constituency. Honorable Speaker, let me just say, in the course of next week, between Tuesday and Thursday, when the House business schedules and the order paper will be published, Honorable Speaker, by Monday night, actually. Then the House business schedules when we transact what business.
Junet, you want to pursue that?
There is clarity now, but Mr. Speaker, the course of the week is a course that you have to, with your indulgence now, Mr. Speaker, and the mood of the House is that on Tuesday we have the finance bill. Can we agree tentatively here and ask the House?
Order, Honorable Junet. Order, members. Order. For avoidance of any doubt and Honorable Junet's point of order, many members thought that by your vote last evening, you concluded the finance bill. You didn't. There is still the committee of the whole. The bill as you passed yesterday is the bill as published. The committee itself has proposed amendments. There are many members, I believe, who will also bring amendments to the bill. And that will be in the committee of the whole, depending on what the House Business Committee, in which Junet yourself sits, you will give direction as to whether to start on Tuesday or Wednesday or whichever day. But I believe that in the course of business, we should be able to start on Tuesday and proceed until you finish. If you want to truncate the process, you can finish on Tuesday. If you want to mount spirited competition, including but not limited to divisions, then we may be able to go on up to Thursday. But be aware that the finance bill is not done yet. Order, no more points of order. Yes, Senior Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I need your guidance on a procedural matter, unless it escaped my attention at any one point. I'm looking at Standing Order 244C in terms of the order in which things are to be done. It suggests to me that the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures which would be presented by the Cabinet Secretary comes first under 244C1. On the same day, under 244C4, on that same day, then the Cabinet Secretary will then present a legislative proposal. It is that legislative proposal which, once presented under now Standing Order 245, constitutes and becomes the finance bill, which then is later discussed. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to understand a situation where the finance bill was already introduced, has already come to the second reading, and the budget proposals have not been made, and the proposal by the Cabinet Secretary has not been presented. What then were we discussing? It is my understanding that if we go that way, then it means we have dispensed with the presentation of the budget proposal by the Cabinet Secretary, in which case I will seek your guidance on why the business you had indicated that will be undertaking from 3 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senior Counsel, the standing order you are citing was actually rendered negatory by a decision of the court that has been the creation of the process that we are undertaking. So this process is not against any law. I hear somebody saying that you participated in the court case that rendered the standing order negatory. So what we are doing is procedural, and we are not in any way flouting any standing order. It wasn't. Honorable members, I have a short communication. And Senior Counsel, we may pursue that argument later in my chamber if you so wish. And it's in relation to interruption of business, pronouncement on the budget policy highlights, and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the financial year 2023-24. Honorable members, Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 and Standing Order 244C require the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to make a public pronouncement on the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government each financial year. In this regard, and as communicated earlier, the Cabinet Secretary will be making this pronouncement shortly. Honorable members, I wish to recognize the dignitaries present in the galleries today. They include members of the Cabinet, led by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Honorable Dr. Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, EGH. Other guests present today include Principal Secretaries, Chairpersons, and Chief Executive Officers of parastatals, senior government officials, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and development partners. On behalf of the National Assembly and on my own behalf, I welcome all of you to the National Assembly. Honorable members, before I invite the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning to make his pronouncement, I wish to remind the House that in accordance with the provision of Standing Order 244C3, the Cabinet Secretary shall be heard without question or clarification sought. Further, the provisions of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017 do apply to the Cabinet Secretary during this sitting. Not all Cabinet Secretaries present, but only the Cabinet Secretary for the Treasury and Planning. Honorable members, I now interrupt the business of the House to allow the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning to make public pronouncement on the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the year 2023-2024 and the medium term. Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, CBS, you may now proceed. The floor is yielded to you.
Mr. Speaker, it is a great honor and privilege for me to present to this august House and to the people of the Republic of Kenya the first budget of the Kenya Kwanza administration under the...
Order, members.
Okay, ada
Minister, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a great honor and privilege for me to present to this august House and to the people of Kenya the first budget of the Kenya Kwanza administration under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces. I do this in compliance with the Standing Order number 241 of the National Assembly and Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act of 2012 that requires the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to make pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures to the national government. This being the first budget following the conclusion of the general election held in August 2022, allow me to congratulate all the honorable members who were re-elected and those who are serving for the first time in this august House. I look forward to working closely with all of you as we implement the bottom-up economic transformation agenda designed to achieve a sustained economic recovery for improved livelihoods for all Kenyans. Before I proceed, Mr. Speaker, allow me to take this opportunity to express my deep appreciation to His Excellency, the President for appointing me to the Cabinet Secretary, to the position of the Cabinet Secretary of the National Treasury and Economic Planning, and entrusting me with the honor of overseeing the management of macroeconomic policy and public financial management for this great nation. I also wish to extend my sincere gratitude to His Excellency, the President, for his wise counsel during the preparations of this budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures that will lay a strong foundation for our socio-economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, the financial year 2023-2024 budget has been prepared against a background of a challenging external and domestic environment. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic, Kenya has, over the past years, suffered and also a series of devastating negative and persistent shocks that include the worst drought in decades, as well as adverse spillover effects of the conflict in Eastern Europe and a tight global financial market condition. The combination of all these negative and continuing shocks are what we describe as a perfect storm that has confronted this new administration. The extreme climate change events have emerged as key drivers of food security and increased cost of living. Indeed, our people are currently confronted with increasing higher prices of basic foods, commodities, energy, and transport. This calls for urgent and decisive interventions, especially on our supply side response. Mr. Speaker, in fulfillment of the requirements under the Constitution on public participation, we accorded Kenyans an opportunity to share their views on issues that needed to be addressed in this budget. Mr. Speaker, we received from many Kenyans proposals and suggestions that have informed the priorities outlined in this budget statement. The key concerns raised by the public can broadly be clustered around 5 issues. 1, the high cost of living. 2, the high cost of unemployment. 3, and this is mostly among the youth. 3, the high tax burden. And 4, the wastage of public resources. And finally, the high public debt. Mr. Speaker, having listened carefully to the concerns from the public and taking cognizance of the socio-economic and environmental challenges facing the country, the budget policy highlights seeks to provide solutions to the said concerns as we all work towards accelerating economic recovery. Proactively, the Kenya Kwanza government has begun the journey to bring down the cost of living and improve the livelihoods, while at the same time fostering a sustainable, inclusive economic transformation. The government has taken the long-term sustainable approach of subsidizing production of goods instead of consumption to respond to the rising cost of living. In this regard, the government has instituted immediate interventions that are aimed at providing short-term solutions to the high cost of living, while at the same time building a momentum for the long-term economic vibrancy and transformation. In particular, the government has covered the following areas. First, through the e-voucher fertilizer subsidy program, availed to 6 million of 50 kilogram bags of subsidized fertilizer worth 15 billion that are retailing at a cost of 350 per bag, a reduction from the market price from 6,500 per bag, representing a subsidy of Kenya shillings 3,000 per bag. So far, the government has registered 5 million farmers nationwide and issued over 2.5 e-vouchers to registered farmers. As a result, Kenyan farmers have been able to plant at least 200,000 additional acres of food this year and used 2 million more kilograms of seeds, and that is expected to improve the agricultural yields. Second, the government has granted duty waivers for importation of key food products such as white maize, rice, yellow maize, soya bean meal, assorted protein concentrates, and feed additives effective from 1st February to 6th February, 1st February this year to 6th August 2023. This has been done in order to bridge the food stocks deficit and will lower the cost of food prices. As a result of the drought, third, the mitigation measures and the climate adaptation programs, the government initiated a national tree planting campaign that seeks to enhance our national tree cover from 12% to 30% through a target of planting 15 billion trees by 2032. In addition, the government has initiated new dam constructions to address the drought concerns and ensure Kenya has enough harvested water to facilitate a water management strategy for irrigation and food production. Fourth, the government has invested very heavily in biotechnology research and uptake of drought-tolerant crops to promote food security, particularly in marginalized areas. In the current year, over 250 metric tons of assorted drought-tolerant seeds valued at Kenya shillings 50 million have been distributed in Embu, Meru, Makueni, Machakos, Tharaka Nithi, Murang'a, Nyeri, Siaya, and Busia counties. Fifth, the government has reformed the National Health Insurance Fund to meet the urgent needs of Kenyans at the bottom of the socio-economic structure by actualizing its purpose as a social medical insurance facility. In addition, the government has committed to deliver universal health coverage to ensure that every Kenyan attains dignified health care at a minimum subscription fee. And finally, the government has reviewed the policy on the energy sector with the aim of developing and diversifying this market further by improving the sourcing and supply of cooking gas that inevitably has resulted in high costs that drive domestic inflation. This has allowed for additional players to be licensed and to set up liquefied petroleum gas facilities. A common use of bulk storage and even handling facility for LPG will be constructed through a private sector participation framework to enhance market certainty and stability in the use of LPG. This will cut costs of handling and evacuating gas from ships to the mainland, and hence allowing dealers to pass through the cost of relief to consumers. Mr. Speaker, in order to improve service delivery and support livelihoods and businesses, as well as strengthen governance institutions, the Kenya Kwanza government has, since assumption of office, established Financial Inclusion Fund. This is commonly known as the Hustlers Fund, that was set up in November 2022 to provide access to affordable credit to individuals and MSMEs, medium and small enterprises, and to encourage savings. This is an intervention that will remain at the bottom of the pyramid in order to access borrowing under the fund. A customer only needs to register through his or her mobile phone. Since the launch of the first product, the Hustler Fund Personal Loan Fund, the government has invested a total of 11 billion shillings. This money has been revolving within the fund, providing low interest rate at 8% per annum, and so far 16.07 million Kenyans, of which 7.1 million are repeat customers, have actually accessed the fund. So far, 30.8 billion has been borrowed from this revolving fund. In addition to borrowing, the fund is designed to encourage savings. To date, 1.5 billion has been saved as a mandatory savings, while Kenya shillings 17 million has been saved on a voluntary basis. We have witnessed a phenomenal growth in the number of transactions that currently stand at 43.5 million transactions. The largest number of the times a single customer borrower has borrowed from the fund is about 50 times, indicating strong traction of the Hustlers Fund. To further empower the medium and small enterprises, the government on 1st June 2023 launched the second product of the Financial Inclusion Fund that is aimed at facilitating Kenyan access funding through groups. This follows the phenomenal success of the personal loans products under this initiative, and this will allow lending groups such as chamas and SACCOs and SACCOs, the groups can now borrow loans from between 20,000 shillings to 1 million shillings. Third, we have redesigned the competence-based education curriculum to make it responsive to our education needs. And fourth, I've employed over 30,000 teachers in a historic and unprecedented drive to improve the national teacher-pupil ratio and enhance performance. Fifth, government has introduced a new funding model for higher education that will make the universities and technical training fully inclusive, financially self-sufficient, and also capable of competing with their peers globally while contributing to our national socio-economic transformation. Sixth, the government has established the National Open University in order to make higher education inexpensive, affordable, accessible, inclusive, and attainable to all. The university will create its charter before the end of this month, that is June 2023. Seventh, the government has launched several affordable housing projects across the country, translating to about 36,000 housing units in just 8 months. Eighth, the government has proposed and moved with digitalization, and the digitalized and automated services to the tune of 3,570 of government services through the eCitizen platform that has enhanced access to government services and brought greater convenience to citizens. The government targets to bring on board close to 5,000 services on the eCitizen platform by the end of 2023. Number 9 is the government has launched a data protection registration system to provide digital identity to all Kenyans in order to facilitate the transactions between the government and its citizens. Finally, returned the port operation from Mombasa and Naivasha returned the port operations from Nairobi and Naivasha to Mombasa in order to revamp the coastal economy and give importers, especially the business community, a choice on cargo clearance. The government has introduced a G2G, a government-to-government arrangement for oil importation to provide a longer-term supply of fuel and ease the monthly demand of US dollars in a situation where global dollar shortage was ensuing. Government has also appointed 4 Court of Appeal judges and 2 judges of the Environment and Land Courts in line with the recommendations of the Judicial Service Commission to strengthen the judiciary. Further, the government escalated the actualization of the judiciary fund that will increase the allocation of resources towards enhancing the access to justice. And finally, the government has enhanced the independence of the National Police Service by granting them financial autonomy as envisaged in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, while we celebrate these achievements, we are awaiting turnaround and inclusive growth. It is aligned to this agenda. It is in alignment to this agenda for this year's budget theme carries that spirit. This year's budget, the theme is bottom-up economic transformation and climate change mitigation and adaptation for improved livelihoods of Kenyans. Consistent with this, the government will scale up implementation of policy priorities and structural reforms under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, as detailed in the 2023 budget policy statement and the 4th medium-term plan, MTP4, which is currently under development, and that it will guide the attainment of these development objectives, as well as a continuation of the Kenyan Vision 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. The strategy will involve increasing investments in 5 strategic sectors that have the largest impact and linkages to the economy, as well as on household welfare as the starting point. These 5 sectors include agricultural transformation, micro and small medium enterprises, enterprise economy, housing and settlement, healthcare and digital superhighway, as well as the creative industry. Special focus will be placed on the interventions that reduce the cost of living, create jobs, achieve more equitable distribution of income, enhance social security, and expand the tax base for more revenues to finance development. And finally, also geared towards increasing foreign exchange to give us flexibility in that market. Mr. Speaker, we intend to implement the policy priorities within a sustainable fiscal framework. Overall, we have moderated our spending to ensure the value for money and enhanced the revenue mobilization efforts to ensure that our public debt remains on a sustainable path. Prioritization is critical because resources are scarce, thus limiting our capacity and desire to cover everything at once. In this regard, the budgeting process for the priority programs under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda will be managed through a value chain approach. This has ensured that the resources allocated along the value chain are allocated to all the components along the value chain, thereby eliminating duplication of roles, removing any funding gaps, and enhancing efficiency in the use of available budgetary resources. Mr. Speaker, it is now my privilege and honor to present the economic and fiscal policy underpinnings the government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda for improved livelihoods to Kenyans. Thereafter, I will broadly outline the proposed resource allocations and revenue-raising measures that the government will implement in the financial year 2023-2024 budget. But before I proceed to elaborate on programs, let me start by highlighting the economic context in which this budget has been prepared. Let me start with economic policy context and focus on the global economy. Mr. Speaker, the financial year 2023-2024 budget has been prepared against a background of increased uncertainties in the global economic outlook, reflecting continued geopolitical tensions, particularly the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe, and the pace of monetary policy tightening amidst concerns about financial sector stability in the advanced economies. As a result, the global economic growth is projected to slow down to 2.8% in 2023 from 3.4% in 2022. Economic prospects are also expected to slow down across regions and countries. Nevertheless, the commodity prices in the global markets, particularly oil and food, have been easing due to improved and functioning supply chains. Let me turn to domestic economy. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic scene, the economic growth for 2022 slowed down to 4.8% from 7.6% in 2021 due to adverse impact of the multiple shocks that affected the economy. Kenya's growth in 2022 was supported by growth in the services sector, while the agricultural sector contracted for the second consecutive year due to the prolonged drought effects, but that also contributed to a slowdown in the growth of manufacturing sector, as well as that of wholesale and retail trade sectors. Mr. Speaker, the economy is expected to rebound and expand by 5.5% in 2023, up from 4.8% in 2022. And it is supposed to maintain that pace of the medium term. The growth will be supported by a broad-based private sector-led growth, including continued strong performance of the services sector and the recovery from the agricultural sector due to improved weather conditions during the March-May rainy season. This growth outlook will be reinforced by interventions being implemented by the government under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that include the provision of subsidized fertilizer and seeds to farmers during the planting season. Further, economic activity is expected to improve and drive aggregate demand expansion as the international community, international commodity prices is coupled with improved exports and resilient private sector consumption, as well as the ongoing public-private investments. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to support economic recovery by pursuing prudent macroeconomic policies geared towards reducing debt vulnerabilities and supporting sustainable and inclusive development. Inflation rate has remained above 7.5%, which is the upper bound target since June 2022. This is driven mainly by high food prices and energy prices following the adverse weather conditions and high global oil prices, but also compounded by the pass-through effects from the domestic currency depreciation. In order to anchor inflation expectations, the Central Bank of Kenya, through Monetary Policy Committee, tightened monetary policy during the last 1 year by raising the central bank rate to 9.5% in March 2023 from 7.5% in May 2022. This monetary policy action, together with improved agricultural production occasioned by the long rains and supported by fertilizer subsidy program and the ongoing importation of key food items, particularly maize, cooking oil, rice, sugar, at a duty-free window, are expected to ease the domestic prices and basic food items. Already, the inflation pressures are easing with inflation rate at 8% in May 2023 from the highs of 9.6% in October 2022. Inflation rate is expected to return to the target range within the second quarter of financial year 2023-2024. Also, in addition, credit to the private sector has grown by 13.2% in the last 12 months to April 2023, and this is supporting economic activity. Most sectors of the economy continue to receive positive credit flows. Mr. Speaker, to further anchor inflation expectations, the Central Bank of Kenya will continue to implement reforms outlined in the White Paper on modernization of the monetary policy framework and operations that are aimed at enhancing the effectiveness of monetary policy formulation and implementation to prevent monetary policy falling behind the curve. These reforms include refining macroeconomic forecasting frameworks in line with the changing structure of the economy, improving the functioning of the interbank market to strengthen monetary policy transmission, and continued improvements of communication on monetary policy decisions. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal policy stance over the medium term aims at supporting the government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda through growth-friendly fiscal consolidation plan designed to slow down the annual growth in public debt and implement an effective liability management strategy without compromising service delivery to citizens. This will improve the country's debt sustainability position. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the policy priorities of the government for fostering economic transformation and improved livelihoods. The policy priorities and structural reforms for improved livelihoods start with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, this year's budget places special emphasis on priorities at the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, which is detailed in 2023 budget policy statement that was approved by this House in March 2023. This agenda is premised to address the challenges of the economy is facing, to stimulate economic recovery, bolster resilience while building on the success realized over time. The strategy will involve increasing investment in at least 5 sectors envisaged to have the largest impact and linkages to the economy, as well as on household welfare. The priority programs are classified under 2 categories, namely the core pillars and the enablers that aim at the creation of a conducive business environment for socio-economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, as indicated earlier, in this statement, the core pillars include agricultural transformation, micro, small, and medium enterprises of the economy, housing and settlement, healthcare, and digital superhighway, and in creative industry. In order to make this program feasible, the government will implement strategic interventions under the following key enablers. First, the infrastructure, manufacturing, the blue economy, the services sector, the environment and climate change, education and training, women agenda, youth empowerment and development agenda, social protection, sports, culture and arts, as well as the governance. Mr. Speaker, in order to realize the aspirations of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the government will first continue to maintain macroeconomic stability and enhance the security to foster and secure conducive business environment for all Kenyans and their investment. Second, the government will intensify national infrastructure development and connectivity of roads and port, energy and fiber optic infrastructure to lower the cost of movement of people and goods, lower the cost of doing business, thereby enhancing profitability of businesses. Third, the government will enhance investment in key economic sectors for broad-based sustainable economic recovery by promoting agricultural transformation, growth in manufacturing, environmental conservation and water supply, food security, climate change mitigation and adaptation, tourism recovery, and sustainable land use and management. In this regard, food security and climate change will also become a focal point for policy formulation going forward. Fourth, the government will expand access to quality social services in health, education, and appropriate social safety nets for the vulnerable population. And finally, the government will support the youth, women, persons living with disabilities through government-funded empowerment programs that leverage on partnership with private sector organizations. Mr. Speaker, the government, under the support of the development partners, is implementing a program that aims at boosting revenue mobilization to reduce total expenditures as a percentage of GDP, thereby providing growth-friendly fiscal consolidation plan designed to slow down the annual growth of public debt and implement an efficient liability management strategy, without at the same time compromising service delivery to citizens. The fiscal consolidation plan targets gradually reduce the fiscal deficit, including grants, from 6.2% of GDP in the financial year 2021-2022 to 5.8% of GDP in the financial year 2022-2023 to 4.4% of GDP in financial year 2023-2024, and further reduce the fiscal gap further to 3.6% in financial year 2025. The Extended Fund Facility and Extended Credit Facility, EFF and ECF arrangements supported by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. We concluded the fifth review of the program in May 2023, and we agreed on the augmentation of access under the program of 75% of the quota, that is SDR special drawing rights for 407.1 million, or which is about US $544.3 million, an extension of the duration of the EFF, ECF arrangement by 10 months to April 2025 to allow sufficient time for meeting the program objectives, and on a new 20-month Resilience and Sustainability Facility, RSF, arrangement that will allow us to access 75% of our quota that will run parallel with the EFF, ECF program arrangements until April 2025. Once approved by the IMF Executive Board in July 2023, Kenya will immediately access SDR 306.7 million, which is about $410 million, including from the augmentation of the access under ECF-EFF. This will bring the cumulative IMF financial support disbursed under the EFF-ECF program arrangements to SDR 1.509 billion, or about $2.017 billion. And for us, that's why we are appreciative of this multilateral institution. The government will also access additional SDR 407.1 million, about 443 million under the new 20-month Resilience Sustainability Facility arrangement upon successful next review. Mr. Speaker, when combined with RSF support, the cumulative IMF commitment to Kenya will be about SDR 2.633 billion, which is about $3.52 billion by April 2025. Mr. Speaker, as a stopgap measure to ease the pressure on the domestic supply of petroleum products, as well as ease pressure on the Kenya shilling arising due to the global shortage of US dollars in the domestic market, we have introduced an innovative new government-to-government arrangement for fuel importation through Regal Notice number 3 of 2023. That Regal Notice allows us to import the importation of petroleum products by private sector through the current open tender system, OTS. To date, the monthly importation of petroleum products is approximately 740,000 metric tons, of which 60% is consumed in the domestic market, while 40% is for transit markets in the region. This product is currently paid for using United States dollars, which puts strain on foreign exchange availability and pressure on nominal exchange rate and ensuing exchange rate volatility in the market on a monthly basis. Mr. Speaker, to contain the pressure of the US dollar availability in the market, as well as exchange rate volatility on a monthly basis, the government entered into a memorandum of understanding with governments of oil-producing countries under which framework agreements have been signed with petroleum exporting companies for the supply of petroleum products on extended credit period of 1 year. From the Green Climate Fund, GCF, the government will continue to implement National Green Climate Fund strategy, which provides an elaborate framework of coordinating and attracting resources from the Green Climate Fund. The government will also implement financing locally led climate action, we call it FROCA, program in collaboration with county governments and development partners to manage climate risks. Further, to support our climate change efforts and characterize additional climate finance from other official and private partners, we have agreed with the IMF on a new 20-month Resilience Sustainability Facility arrangement that will run in parallel with the current program arrangement until April 2025. Mr. Speaker, the government last year committed to fast-track the enactment of Disaster Risk Management Bill and finalize the Public Finance Management, Disaster Risk Management Fund regulations. These are meant to strengthen the disaster risk management in the country, given that Kenya is predisposed to various disasters, some of which are exacerbated by the ravaging effects of climate change. This disaster often have a huge negative impact on the economy. I wish to report that the relevant departmental committee of this House is in the process of considering registration on matters relating to disaster risk management. I urge this House to prioritize this matter to enable Kenya have an overarching framework on disaster risk management. I will later be submitting to this House for consideration the Public Finance Management, into brackets, the Disaster Risk Management Fund Regulations 2023 that will enable the establishment of the Disaster Risk Management Fund. Let me turn to legal and policy, legal and institutional reforms. Mr. Speaker, the government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda, BETTER, will be underpinned by sound and appropriate policy, legal and institutional reforms that are aimed at improving the business environment increasing the efficiency of public service delivery, and strengthening the accountability and transparency in public finance management. These reforms are outlined as follows. First, the procurement reforms. Mr. Speaker, on a continuous basis, the government reviews the procurement policies and procedures to ensure that we achieve efficiency and transparency and enhance good governance and promote savings in the procurement process. This is one critical area that government can achieve efficiency and unlock savings given the limited financial resources and fiscal space. With this in mind, Mr. Speaker, last year, the National Treasury committed to this House to roll out an end-to-end e-government procurement system, EGP, with a pilot phase commencing in July 2022 and a target date for full rollout to all ministries, departments, and agencies in January 2023. I wish to report to this House that the process is still in progress, albeit with some delays. The system will be rolled out by December 2023 to both national and county governments. Once rolled out, all government procurement and asset disposal procedures and processes will be managed online through the system. The system will enhance efficiency and transparency in the procurement functions. The system will also ease cost of doing business with the government and has the capabilities of monitoring and tracking all public procurement and asset disposals. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to facilitate access to government procurement opportunities and empower the MSMEs owned by women, youth, and persons with disabilities. This remains a key priority of government under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. For this reason, the National Treasury has re-engineered the access of government procurement opportunities, AGPO, portal to enable real-time registration and monitoring. The National Treasury has also directed all procuring entities to ensure prompt payment of all contracts successfully implemented under the AGPO that will enable businesses owned by the target group access liquidity promptly. Mr. Speaker, a large number of state corporations rely on the exchequer funding to service their payroll and other expenses. Over the years,
should not be recruiting 51 principal secretaries and an equal number of illegal cabinet administrative secretaries. Eliminate unnecessary offices, including the offices of the spouses of our executive. We don't need this office.
Thank you, Mama Zamzam. Although you are flouting the rules of the House by reading a speech instead of debating. Mama Alice Nganga. The rules of the House don't allow you to read a speech except the mover here if he has notes to
income-generating real estate assets. Let me turn now to pension reforms. Mr. Speaker, pension coverage in Kenya currently stands at 22% of the working population, leaving majority of Kenyans without a pension cover. This underscores the need to extend pension coverage to the informal sector, which constitutes the majority of our workforce. To this end, Mr. Speaker, the government is working on a national pensions policy to address key concerns on coverage, portability of schemes, reciprocal arrangements to address concerns of Kenyans in the diaspora, and mitigate the fragmentation in the sector. In furtherance of the ideals at the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the National Treasury has established an innovative scheme, the Kenya National Enterprise Savings Trust, KNEST, with a focus on the population in the informal segment of the economy. In order to promote uptake of the scheme, we will deliberately form strategic partnership to facilitate voluntary pension contributions for individuals in this sector and to continue to explore options to provide diverse pension solutions for self-employed individuals. Mr. Speaker, to effectively administer the public service pensions, the National Treasury will invest in modern technology and digital solutions to streamline pension processes and improve service delivery. In this regard, public service schemes will provide user-friendly online platforms that allow the pensioners to access their pension statements, make inquiries, and update their personal information conveniently. The government continues to implement public service superannuation schemes with the end goal of easing the burden of pension payments by the government. Me turn to insurance reforms, Mr. Speaker. In the past 2 years, the insurance sector has grown by 3.36 billion shillings from a premium of 273 billion. The industry has also attracted investment from key multinational players. In order to further enhance the growth of the sector, the Insurance Regulatory Authority has rolled out a micro-insurance framework that will contribute to increase penetration coverage for the individuals with low incomes. The authority will strengthen private insurance's role in the universal health care coverage, promote crop and livestock insurance, as well as support insurance for MSMEs. Mr. Speaker, there are no deterrent measures under the Insurance Act to motivate accountability and observance of directors' duties as well as senior managers' professional responsibilities. To address this shortcoming, I have submitted to this House Insurance Amendment Bill 2023 to provide for offenses relating to the management of an insurer. In addition, the bill will contain other amendments aimed at enhancing the efficiency of the Insurance Regulatory Authority in regulating the insurance industry. Let me turn to SACCO societies, Mr. Speaker. The SACCO industry is characterized by many difficulties to effectively compete in the deposit-taking and credit markets. To address this challenge, the SACCO Societies Regulatory Authority, SASRA, is working on amendments to SACCO Societies Act 2008 that will provide the licensing and supervision of shared SACCO services platform. This initiative will improve the efficiency and competitiveness of SACCOs through establishment of cost-sharing digital platform to enable small SACCOs achieve economies of scale, while at the same time mainstreaming regulatory compliance in a cost-effective manner. Mr. Speaker, 12 years ago, the government introduced prudential regulation to secure financial stability of SACCOs and boost savings for members. However, there has been a lack of a resolution mechanism for financially distressed SACCOs. In addition to addressing these challenges, the Circle Society Regulatory Authority has proposed amendments to the Circle Societies Act 2008 to provide for a framework for appointment of trustees to the Deposit Guarantee Fund for Circles in Kenya, DGF. Let me turn to unclaimed financial assets, Mr. Speaker. The Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority Act does not provide for claimers to designate a beneficiary of their assets or to cause of their choice, or to a cause of their choice, and therefore any claim must be paid to the claimant. To address this, I've proposed to amend the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority Act so as to empower claimants to designate beneficiaries of the unclaimed asset or to a cause of their choice. Let me turn to ease of doing business, Mr. Chairman, and consumer protection. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Competition Authority will implement codes of practice to ensure that MSMEs in the retail and insurance sectors are protected from powerful buyers. The Competition Authority will screen and investigate infractions such as suspected cartels or abuse of dominance conduct, such as excessive pricing, price discrimination, predatory pricing, margin squeeze, to ensure a level playing field. And the Competition Authority will actualize and initiate actualize the initiative area started with the National Assembly to address the issue of price fixing by professional services to make the fees competitive and improve the quality of services. On consumer protection, the authority will monitor and investigate emerging consumer issues on the utility sector, pharmaceuticals, digital financial services, e-commerce, insurance, aviation, and safety of basic commodities. In addition, the authority will seek redress through replacement or refunds to customers affected by dark commercial patterns, scams, fraud under the digital economy. Let me turn now to the fiscal framework. Mr. Speaker, the government fiscal policy for the financial year 2023-2024 and the medium-term budget aims at undertaking a growth-friendly fiscal consolidation plan to ensure debt sustainability. This will be achieved through improved revenue collection, primarily through broadening of the tax base and containing overall expenditure to target set, while prioritizing higher impact social and investment expenditure. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal policy targets to grow total revenues to 17.9% of GDP in financial year 2023-2024 and above 18.3% of GDP over the medium term. As part of the economic turnaround plan, the government will scale up revenue collection efforts by the Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA, to a target of Kenya shillings 4.0 trillion over the medium term. In order to achieve this, the government is undertaking a combination of both tax administrative measures and tax policy reforms. Mr. Speaker, regarding tax policy, the government will implement the national tax policy and finalize the medium-term revenue strategy for the period financial year 2023-2024 to 2026-2027. The national tax policy, which is before this House, will enhance the administrative efficiency of the tax system, provide consistency and certainty in tax registration and management of tax expenditures. The medium-term revenue strategy comprises rigorous administrative and policy measures to reform the tax system, which is expected to boost tax revenue over the medium term. On tax administration, Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Revenue Authority is implementing reforms to move towards seamless taxation by ensuring that its systems, taxpayers, and businesses are integrated to allow for the automatic movement of data through machine-to-machine based processes, and where appropriate, shift to real-time processing. This will enable KRA to monitor business transactions in real time, therefore sealing revenue leakages through tax avoidance and evasion. On the expenditure reforms, Mr. Speaker, the government will sustain efforts to improve efficiency in public spending and ensure value for money by eliminating non-priority expenditures, retiring expenditure and unsustainable consumption subsidies, reducing tax exemption, scaling up use of public-private partnership financing for commercially viable projects, and rolling out end-to-end procurement system. Mr. Speaker, to address the challenges of perennial low absorption of development partners' funds that have denied Kenyans the full benefit of this financing, the government will put in place policies and administrative measures to minimize payments of unnecessary fees and charges. Let me turn to revenue projections, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, supported by the tax policy reforms and administrative measures highlighted above, we project total revenue corrections, including appropriations in aid and grants for the financial year 2023-2024 budget, to be Kenya shillings 2.96 trillion, and that is equivalent to 18.2% of gross domestic product, GDP. Of this, ordinary revenue is projected at Kenya shillings 2.57 trillion, equivalent to 15.8% of GDP. Ministerial appropriations in aid is projected at Kenya shillings 348.7 billion, and grants are projected at Kenya shillings 42.2 billion. Expenditure projections, Mr. Speaker. Total expenditure projections in financial year 2023-2024 budget is projected at 3.7 trillion, equivalent to 22.6% of GDP. Of these, recurrent expenditures will amount to Kenya shillings 2.53 trillion, equivalent to 15.6% of GDP. Development expenditures, including allocation to domestic and foreign financed projects, contingency fund, equalization fund, and conditional capital transfers to county government, is Kenya shillings 743 billion, equivalent to 4.7% of GDP. Equitable share to county governments is projected at that 385.4 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to fiscal balance. Mr. Speaker, given the projected revenue and grants against the projected expenditures, the fiscal gap of fiscal deficit is projected to decline from Kenya shillings 718.0 billion, equivalent to 4.4% of GDP in financial year 2023-2024, from a projected Kenya shillings 840.9 billion, equivalent to 5.8% of GDP in financial year 2022-2023. The fiscal deficit will be financed through net external financing of a Kenya shillings 1.5 billion, equivalent to 0.8% of GDP, and net domestic financing of 586.5 billion, and that is equivalent to 3.6% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, our medium-term fiscal consolidation policy targets to progressively reduce the level of fiscal deficit from the expected 5.8% of GDP in financial year 2022-2023 to 3.6% of GDP in the financial year 2026 to 2027. Let me turn to public debt management, Mr. Speaker. Kenya's public debt remains sustainable, but with elevated risks of debt distress due to persistent global shocks that adversely affect the liquidity ratios. The depreciation of the Kenya shilling against major currencies and the rise of interest rates have elevated cost of debt service. Further, the depreciation of the currency has increased the size of the public debt stock, as half of the public debt is actually denominated in foreign currency. Although the debt burden has risen, Kenya has not accumulated debt service arrears, and the government is committed to honor all public debt obligations as they fall due. Over the medium term, revenue-driven fiscal consolidation policy stance is expected to improve further the country's debt sustainability ratios and debt carrying capacity. Mr. Speaker, the current limit of the debt as approved in 2020 by this House is Kenya shillings 10 trillion. Guided by the best practice, the government intends to change the public debt ceiling from a numerical number to a debt anchor in the form of a ratio of public debt to GDP in present value terms. The proposed change to the debt ceiling provides an appropriate guide for optimal level of public debt based on the country's ability to pay. This is the debt carrying capacity that can objectively be assessed, as well as provide directions on information on debt accumulation or reduction from time to time. In order to anchor debt ceiling in a statute, the National Treasury developed a Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2023, which has been submitted to this august House for enactment. The bill was subjected to public participation in line with the requirements of the Constitution of Kenya on transparency and accountability in public policy formulation. I urge the honorable members to prioritize and consider this bill favorably. Mr. Speaker, the external debt service is projected to increase to Kenya shillings 475.6 billion in financial year 2023-2024 from Kenya shillings 242.1 billion in the financial year 2023-2023, for financial year 2022-2023, mainly reflecting redemption of the US dollar 2.0 billion Eurobond, which is approximately 241.8 billion with the current exchange rate. In preparation for the redemption of this maturing bond, the National Treasury and the Economic Planning issued an expression of interest to bring on board a lead manager to advise the government on liability management options towards the resolution of the Eurobond 2024. Mr. Speaker, I wish to assure Kenyans and investors that our fiscal positions remain strong and the government remains committed to meet all maturing obligations as and when they fall due, including the maturing Eurobond for June 2024. Mr. Speaker, due to the limited fiscal space, the government has strengthened the public-private partnership, PPP framework, to leverage on private sector expertise to deliver projects that have strong economic, commercial, and environmental benefits that are also aligned to our national priorities with sustainability and climate change as key considerations and drivers. To ensure the sustainability of PPP projects, the Projects Facilitation Fund, PFF, has been operationalized. The fund will support project preparation, provide viability gap funding to projects, as well as a source of liquidity to meet fiscal commitments and contingent liabilities that may arise from PPP projects. Mr. Speaker, with the fund in place and the robust legal and regulatory regime, the private sector has the necessary confidence and security to invest in PPP projects. Indeed, in the last financial year, water supply and food security, several high-impact projects have been appraised. Water supply and food security, Several high-impact projects have been appraised and approved to proceed to the project development phase under the PPP model. These projects will provide production of additional 51,000 hectares to further strengthen the food security agenda, which is a high priority for the Kenya Kwanza administration. The bulk of water will increase potable water. The bulk water will increase potable water supply by an estimated 200,000 cubic meters per day. The National Treasury and the Ministry of Water and Sanitation have developed a water purchase agreement which will pave way for the private sector to develop projects in a sustainable way. The National Treasury is in the process of developing a 10-year infrastructure plan that will be cross-cutting across various ministries to support delivery and prioritization of projects. Mr. Speaker, to build on this, the National Treasury plans to mobilize an estimated Kenya shillings 100 billion in private sector capital through various priority sectors. The focus will be on priority investment and underlying key projects and programs in each sector that deliver nationally significant infrastructure drive growth and also unlock private sector investment with greatest potential of benefits to Kenyans. These sectors will include airports, seaports, blue economy, water, agriculture, industrialization, that is special economic zones, energy, including transmission lines, and digitalization, among other key sectors in the economy. Inclusion of local goods, works, and services will be emphasized for each project to contribute to overall economic growth by encouraging local investments in PPP projects. To also strengthen local investment, the National Treasury will be holding a series of roundtables to build local capacity in the financial sector so as to increase local financing of PPP projects. The National Treasury has embraced the climate resilience and adaptation framework for public-private partnership projects. This is to ensure that infrastructure projects are aligned to the realities of climate change. To achieve on the PPP mandate of scaling up private sector capital, the National Treasury will leverage on the continued support from development partners as well as other key institutions, both in public and private sector, including capital markets, pension funds, and commercial banks, in scaling up the private sector capital under the PPP framework. Let me turn to public investments management. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, the House approved Public Investment Management, PIM, regulations, 2022. The objectives of the regulations is to provide the national and county governments and their entities with a standardized approach in project cycle management to enhance transparency, accountability, prudent use of public resources, and public participation. The government will continue implementing the regulations to enhance efficiency in identification and implementation of priority social and economic investment projects. This will further curtail runaway project cost, eliminate duplication, and improve working synergy among implementation actors for timely delivery and development of the development projects. In the financial year 2023-2024, the National Treasury will develop and roll out the Public Investment Management Information System, PIMIS, or PIMIS. It automates public investments management processes as outlined in the regulations to ensure that only projects with highest socio-economic returns are undertaken and prioritized for completion. Let me turn to resource allocation under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, the highlights of the budget allocation in the coming financial year are provided in recognition of the need to restrain borrowing and utilize the revenues and grants projected and in the fiscal framework. The proposed total programmed expenditures spending for the financial year 2023-2024 has been capped at 3.68 trillion. The bottom-up economic transformation agenda, Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned earlier, the government will implement strategic priorities under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that is geared towards economic turnaround and inclusive growth. The agenda focuses on 5 sectors that have been outlined, and they have been outlined because they give the largest impact to the economy as well as households, raise the households' welfare. This include, for purposes of repeating, agricultural transformation, micro, small, and medium enterprise economy, housing and settlements, healthcare, digital superhighway, and creative industry. Mr. Speaker, to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency in the planned investment in the 5 sectors, Kenya Kwanza administration has adopted the value chain approach to budgeting. In this regard, the government has identified 9 key value chain areas for implementation, namely leather, cotton, dairy, edible oils, tea, rice, brew economy, natural resources including minerals and forestry, and building materials. This will ensure that there is no break in the value chain, there is no break in the cycle of resource allocation for value chain, and that in the value chain, and that adequate resources are allocated to the entities along the value chain. And of importance, Mr. Speaker, this will eliminate any form of duplication of both roles and budgeting to ensure that there are no gaps and thus ensure efficiency in resource allocation. Agricultural transformation and inclusive growth, Mr. Speaker, the government will implement interventions to ensure food security in the country through climate change, mitigation, and adaptation, thereby reducing the cost of living. As part of the country's long-term food security plan, the government, working with private sector, will continue to subsidize fertilizer in order to make it available and improve productivity in counties. This intervention is also aimed at creating jobs, as agriculture has the highest employment multiplier effect owing to its strong forward and backward linkages to other sectors of the economy. Mr. Speaker, in order to support our aspirations of attaining food and nutrition security, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocations of Kenya shillings 49.9 billion to relevant programs in this budget. Out of this, 5.5 billion shillings is proposed for fertilizer subsidy program, 8.6 billion for the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project, 2.7 billion for the National Agricultural and Rural Inclusivity Projects, 2.1 billion for the Kenya Cereal Enhancement Program, 2.8 billion for the Emergency Locust Response, 1.4 billion for small-scale irrigation and value addition programs, 1.3 billion on food production and nutrition security program, 500 million for agricultural sector development support program, and 500 Kenya shillings 2.1 billion for livestock value chain support project, Kenya shillings 1.5 billion for Kenya livestock commercialization program, and Kenya shillings 166 million for the embryo transfer project. I also propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 350 million for the development of the leather industrial park at Kinani, Kenya shillings 220 million for livestock production, and Kenya shillings 132 million for leather value chain. To enhance animal disease control, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocations of Kenya shillings 130 million for sustainable sassafras and trypanosomiasis-free areas in Kenya, and Kenya shillings 135 for the establishment of liquid nitrogen hydrogen. Mr. Speaker, the realization of food and nutrition security also relies heavily on the sustainable utilization of the brew economy, brew economy resources. To promote this, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 2.6 billion for the acquisition, for the aquaculture business development projects, Kenya shillings 3.5 billion for Kenya marine fisheries and socio-economic development projects, Kenya shillings 1.2 billion for marine fish stock assessment, Kenya shillings 580 million for capacity building in deep sea fishing, Kenya shillings 142 million for the rehabilitation of fish landing sites in Lake Victoria, Kenya shillings 141.5 million for the aquaculture technology development and innovations transfer, Kenya shillings 500.7 million for Liwatoni ultra-modern fish hub, and Kenya shillings 88 million for the development of the brew economy initiatives. Mr. Speaker, in order to increase agricultural productivity and enhance the resilience to climate change risks in targeted smallholder farming and pastoral communities in Kenya, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocations of Kenya shillings 1.5 billion for climate smart agriculture productivity project, Kenya shillings 625 million to enhance drought resilience and sustainable livelihood program, Kenya shillings 318 million towards adding drought emergencies in Kenya project. In addition, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocations of Kenya shillings 300 for the crop insurance scheme to reduce the vulnerabilities of Kenya farmers to disease and natural disasters. Mr. Speaker, to ensure legitimacy of RAD ownership, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 1.2 billion for processing and registration of title deeds, Kenya shillings 2.6 billion for the settlement of the RAD race, Kenya shillings 755 million for digitization, Kenya shillings 755 million for digitization of RAD registries, and Kenya shillings 138.3 million for the construction of RAD registries. Mr. Speaker, transforming the macro, small and medium enterprises, MSME economy. Mr. Speaker, this is going to help us and to tackle the key bottlenecks of MSMEs on limited access to credit. The government rolled out in November 2022 Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustlers Fund, with an initial target budget of 20 billion shillings in the current financial year, as an intervention to correct market failure problems at the bottom of the pyramid. This program aims to lift those at the bottom of the pyramid through structured products in personal finance that includes savings, credit, insurance, and investment. This, together with other affirmative action funds like the Youth Enterprise Fund, Women Enterprise Fund, UESO Fund, and MSME's Credit Guarantee Scheme, will increase access to affordable credit to targeted persons and sectors, and thereby increase their investment and allow for private sector-led growth. To further support MSMEs, women, and the youth of this country, I propose to the National Assembly to effect an additional budget allocation of Kenya shillings 10 billion towards the Hustlers Fund, Kenya shillings 300 million to SMEs in the manufacturing sector, Kenya shillings 182.8 million for Women Enterprise Fund, Kenya shillings 175 for Youth Enterprise Fund, Enterprise and Development Fund, and Kenya shillings 192 million to UESO Fund. These allocation will inevitably guarantee access to affordable credit to the hustlers, households, MSMEs, and therefore accord them an opportunity to make their rightful contribution to nation building. Let me turn to housing and settlement. Mr. Speaker, the cost of housing is a heavy burden to the majority of Kenyans, and is the main factor driving the proliferation of slums in the country. The government's commitment is to turn the housing challenge into an economic opportunity to create quality jobs for our over 100,000 young people graduating from TVETs every year, directly in the construction sector, and also indirectly through the production of building products. This will be achieved through, among others, facilitating the delivery of 250,000 houses per annum and enabling affordable housing mortgages. To ensure success of this initiative, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of 35.2 billion for the housing program. This includes 7.3 billion under the Kenya Urban Program, KENAP, Kenya shillings 5.5 billion to Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company for enhancement of the company's capital, as well as for on-lending to primary mortgage lenders, Kenya shillings 3.2 billion for construction of affordable housing units, as well as Kenya shillings 3.3 billion for the construction of social housing units. Other key proposed allocations to the housing, urban development and public works sector includes shillings 5.5 billion for the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project Phase 2, Kenya shillings 5.2 billion for the construction of markets, Kenya shillings 932 million to the maintenance of government pool houses, Kenya shillings 1.1 billion for the construction of housing units for the National Police and Kenya prisons, Kenya shillings 637 million for the Kenya municipal programs, and Kenya shillings 150 million for the construction of footbridges, and Kenya shillings 300 million for the development of appropriate building technology. Enhancing the quality and affordable health care. Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza administration is committed and determined to realize the constitutional right to health in the shortest time period by delivering a universal health care coverage USA system. This entails promoting access to quality and affordable health care through the Universal Health Care Coverage Program. Towards this end, Mr. Speaker, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 141.2 billion to the health sector to support various programs aimed at supporting universal health care coverage. Mr. Speaker, specific proposed allocation for the various activities and programs include Kenya shillings 18.4 billion for the universal health care coverage, Kenya shillings 3.7 billion for the Kenya COVID-19 Emergency Response Project, Kenya shillings 4.1 billion for free maternity health care, Kenya shillings 5.9 billion for the managed equipment services, as well as managed equipment services, MES, as well as Kenya shillings 1.7 billion to provide medical cover for the elderly and severely disabled persons in our society. Mr. Speaker, to lower cases of HIV/AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis in the economy, Kenya shillings 24.8 billion is proposed at a global fund, and Kenya shillings 4.6 billion to enhance vaccines and immunization program. Mr. Speaker, to promote early diagnosis and management of cancer and reduce the burden of treatment among Kenyans, I propose to the National Assembly to effect a budget allocation of Kenya shillings 1.9 billion for construction of cancer center at Kisii Level 5 Hospital, Kenya shillings 500 for strengthening of cancer center management at Kenyatta National Hospital, and an additional Kenya shillings 155 million is proposed for the establishment of regional cancer centers. Further, to improve the health service delivery, I propose to the National Assembly to effect a budget allocation of 21.6 billion for Kenyatta National Hospital, Kenya shillings 12.8 billion for the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, Kenya shillings 8.8 billion for the Kenya Medical Training Colleges, Kenya shillings 3.3 billion for the Kenya Medical Research Institute, Kenya shillings 2.4 billion for the construction of the Kenya National Hospital Burns and Pediatric Centers. Kenya shillings 1.4 billion for the equipping of laboratories and classrooms of KMTC. Kenya shillings 1.1 billion for the renovation of Kenyatta National Hospital. Kenya shillings 1 billion for the procurement of family planning and reproductive health commodities. Kenya shillings 1 billion for the procurement of equipment for the National Blood Transfusion Service, and Kenya shillings 352 million for the digital health platform. Let me turn to digital superhighway and creative economy. Mr. Speaker, the digital superhighway will play a critical role in enabling the government to achieve the objectives of bottom-up economic transformation agenda, as well as in enhancing revenue collection via automation of VAT systems. Digitalization and automation will increase productivity and competitiveness through providing quick access to the market and reducing information asymmetry, as well as improving risk management. Promotion of music, theater, graphic design, digital animation, fashions, and craft, among others, will increase employment for the youth. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of these interventions is expected to stimulate economic recovery while at the same time securing sustainable and inclusive growth amidst emerging challenges. But more importantly, improve the quality of growth from the public sector investment-led growth to a dynamic private sector-led growth. To achieve these aspirations, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 15.1 billion to fund initiatives in the information, communication, and technology sector. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, this proposed allocation includes 600 million for the government shared services to fast-track the development of the Concert Technopolis city. I propose the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 4.8 billion for the horizontal infrastructure phase 1, Kenya shillings 1.2 billion for Concert data center and smart city facilities, and Kenya shillings 475 million for construction of Concert complex phase 1B. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations include 5.7 billion shillings for the construction of the Kenya Advanced Institute of Science and Technology at Concert Technopolis, Kenya shillings 1.3 billion backbone phase, 583 million for the maintenance and rehabilitation of the last mile county connectivity network. Mr. Speaker, having highlighted expenditures under the junior secondary school capitation, Kenya shillings 5 billion to support examinations fee waiver, Kenya shillings 4.8 billion for recruitment of 20,000 intern teachers, Kenya shillings 1 billion for the promotion of teachers, Kenya shillings 4.9 billion for the school feeding program, and Kenya shillings 940 million for the provision of sanitary towels. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 1.3 billion for training of teachers on competency-based curriculum, and Kenya shillings 400 million for the digital literacy program and ICT integration in our secondary schools. To support infrastructure development and ensure safe learning in schools, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocations of Kenya shillings 6 billion for primary school and secondary schools infrastructure, including classrooms for junior secondary schools, and Kenya shillings 1.9 billion for construction and equipment of technical training institutes and vocational training centers. Further, 1.8 billion is proposed to increase access and improve the quality of technical and vocational education training programs under the East Africa Skills Transformation and Regional Integration Project. Mr. Speaker, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocations to the education sector to include 316.7 billion shillings for Teacher Service Commission, Kenya shillings 97.5 billion for the University Education, Kenya shillings 30.3 billion for the Higher Education Loans Board, Kenya shillings 2.7 billion for Kenya Secondary Education Quality Improvement Project, and Kenya shillings 5.2 billion capitation for TVET students. Mr. Speaker, Kenya shillings 980 million is proposed for technical vocational education training and entrepreneurship. Kenya shillings 1.5 billion for promotion of youth employment and vocational training, and 749 million for the research, science, and technology and innovation. Let me move now to supporting manufacturing for job creation. Mr. Speaker, in order to improve productivity in the manufacturing sector, as earlier indicated, the government has adopted a value chain approach through bottom-up economic transformation agenda. This will address bottlenecks that impede the growth of the manufacturing sector in order to create jobs and enhance the economy's competitiveness. To further promote local industries, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 26.9 billion under the various implementing ministries, departments, and agencies. Out of this allocation, 4.7 billion will support establishment of county integrated agro-industrial parks. Kenya shillings 3 billion for construction of 6 export processing zones flagship projects. Kenya shillings 3.1 billion for supporting access to finance and enterprise recovery project. Kenya shillings 500 million for the development of special economic zones textile park in Naivasha, and Kenya shillings 1.8 billion for the construction of an effluent treatment plant. Mr. Speaker, in order to maximize the benefits from our cash crop, the government will make further investment towards the revival of and enhancement of output. In this respect, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation to the revitalization of the cash crops. Kenya shillings 120 million for cotton, Kenya shillings 62 million for coconut, Kenya shillings 35 million for cashew nut, and Kenya shillings 150 million for pyrethrum. Mr. Speaker, I also propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 100 million for the modernization of cooperative cotton ginneries, Kenya shillings 134 million for the National Edible Oils Crop Promotion Project, and Kenya shillings 270 million for Sugar Reforms Support Project. Mr. Speaker, to equip the youth with essential internship opportunities, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 1.5 billion for the Kenya Industry Entrepreneurship Project, the Kenya Industry and Entrepreneurship Project, Kenya shillings 300 million for the Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities Project, Kenya shillings 332 million for the construction of industrial research laboratories, and Kenya shillings 182.9 million for the constituency industrial development centers. In addition, improving security, Mr. Chairman, the security is critical for creating a safe environment for the investment and protection of our citizens and their property. For this reason, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocations for Kenya shillings 338.2 billion to support operations of the Kenya Defense Forces, the National Police Service, the National Intelligence Service, and the prison services. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocation include 144.9 billion for the Kenya Defense Forces, Kenya shillings 98.6 billion for the National Police Service, Kenya shillings 44.3 billion for the National Intelligence Service, and Kenya shillings 31.3 billion for prison services. I have also proposed Kenya shillings 8.8 billion for the leasing of police motor vehicles, Mr. Speaker, for better equip the National Police Service, I have proposed an initial allocation of Kenya shillings 500 million for the police modernization program. Mr. Speaker, I will later of the welfare of our disciplined forces is at the center of the Kenya Kwanza administration. To improve housing accommodation for our defense forces, we shall fast track the delivery of staff houses through public-private partnership framework. We have already around Kenya Defense Forces to retain Kenya shillings 534 million currently collected from rental income and applied towards repayment for the houses once complete. In addition, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, His Excellency the President appointed a task force to review the terms and conditions of police, prisons, and national youth service. We shall be presenting a funding proposal to this House once the discussions are concluded and adopted within the government. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations include 2.9 billion for group personal insurance for police and prison services and Kenya shillings in society and employment opportunities for the vulnerable groups, vulnerable members of the society. In this regard, I propose to the National Assembly to effect a budget allocation of Kenya shillings 38.2 billion for the social protection and affirmative actions in this budget. Out of this proposed allocation, Kenya shillings 18 billion will cater for cash transfers to elderly persons, Kenya shillings 7.9 billion for the orphans and vulnerable children, and Kenya shillings 1.2 billion for persons living with severe disabilities. Mr. Speaker, to ensure the elderly and other vulnerable groups under the cash transfer program do not take long waiting for their cash payment and cash transfers will be prioritized and paid alongside the monthly government payroll as and when it is due. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocation for the vulnerable group members of our society also includes 5.6 billion for the Kenya Hunger Safety Net program, Kenya shillings 3.3 billion for Kenya Social and Economic Inclusion Project. In addition, Kenya shillings 900 million will go to Child Welfare Society of Kenya, Kenya shillings 400 million for the Presidential Bursary for the orphans, and Kenya shillings 459 million for the National Development Fund for persons living with disabilities. These allocations shall remain ring-fenced from any budget rationalization and will be fully funded in order to achieve the desired results. Let me turn to equity, poverty reduction, women and youth empowerment programs. Mr. Speaker, the most pressing challenge in our country at the moment is lack of job opportunities for the youth. This has been exacerbated by the hard economic times following several negative shocks explained earlier in the statement. In order to empower the youth and support businesses owned by youth and women, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 81.9 billion creation and arts. Mr. Speaker, the government has prioritized expanding the space for creativity, including freedom of expression and protection of intellectual property rights. We will also strengthen mainstreaming of arts and culture infrastructure and support cultural production and creative economy. We are also cognizant of the brand value of Kenyans participating and excelling in international sports arena as of ultimate importance to us. To support tourism, sports, culture, and recreation, I propose to the National Assembly to effect budget allocation of Kenya shillings 12.5 billion. This includes an allocation of 6.4 billion under the sports, arts, Social Development Fund, Kenya shillings 4.1 billion for the Tourism Fund, and Kenya